How are you all of, or how all of you guys are? I hope you are doing fine. Fine. So let's begin with the lecture. Let's begin with the session, and let me start sharing the screen. Okay, and let me adjust the chat box and all. Fine. I hope you guys can see the shared screen, and let's begin with the lecture today. The session today is something. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's quickly revise. Okay, thoda you come to pace. In fact, I happen to see there are a few people who are new to this lecture. Fine, so we'll revise a bit and then we'll again continue with a new topic, new chapter today. Fine, let's begin with that. So this was something which we had dealt with in the first lecture. The first chapter, actually, this first session be inflation ita, second session be inflation ita. But then the first chapter in general, if we speak about, then the first chapter which we had dealt with was inflation. And apart from this, apart from inflation, we had discussed about the definition of inflation, the types and reasons of inflation. कौन से थे? चार types थे, ठीक है? Demand pull, supply push or cost push, monetary inflation, and internal or external inflation. Just someone in the waiting room. So ये चार reasons थे. That is something which we had discussed. And then the impacts of inflation. So we had discussed the impacts of inflation on creditors and debtors, the impact of inflation on savings, and I hope you remember this, the impact of inflation on investment. So ये सारी चीजें हम लोगों ने डिस्कस की थी. Then we had discussed the associated terms. वो associated terms में क्या क्या आ रहा है? Associated terms में आ रहा था. We had discussed about deflation, disinflation, reflation. Fine, all these were the terms which we had discussed in associated terms. ठीक है? बाद में low inflation, high inflation, galloping inflation, runaway inflation. ठीक है? So ये सारी चीजें हम लोगों ने उसमें डिस्कस की थी. Quickly moving ahead. Okay, how it is measured. So we had seen that it is measured by three things, which is one is CPI, the other is WPI, and the third is GDP deflator. So CPI and WPI you had understood then. ठीक है? GDP deflator हम लोगों ने थोड़े टाइम के बाद किया था. ठीक है? I'll tell you exactly when हम लोगों ने GDP deflator किया था. But I hope you are recollecting all these things. ठीक है? And how to control inflation, that also we had seen. How to control inflation. There were two ways. ठीक है? One was monetary policy brought about by whom? I am just asking you a question. The monetary policy is brought about by whom? Come on, quickly, an answer. Fine, cool. Harshad has come up with an answer. And very true, very true. It's RBI. But RBI under which committee? RBI under which committee? Actually, it is dominated by RBI, but there is a name of that. Very true, Nakul. Very true. It's the name of the committee is Monetary Policy Committee. We had discussed. उसमें से 3 member RBI के होते हैं, 3 member government के होते हैं. ठीक है? और जो 3 member जो RBI के होंगे, उसमें से RBI governor will be the chairman of that particular committee, and there is a veto power with him. So ये सारी चीजें हम लोगों ने discuss की थी. We know actually it is RBI, but it is Monetary Policy Committee dominated by RBI. That way we tend to say. Fine. So this was something which we had discussed then, and the next was monetary policy and the concept of liquidity. ये इसके बारे में हम लोगों ने समझा था. Just someone in the waiting room. Okay. उसमें क्या था? उसमें what is monetary policy we had started with. So monetary policy basically a tool with the central bank of the country to and it had many objectives. I hope you remember बहुत सारे objectives. So it was even pertaining to employment, it was pertaining to maintaining the savings rate, it was pertaining to ensuring that the inflation remains within a specified limit. So specified limit कितना था? Just asking you, just random MCQs from the previous lecture which we had dealt with. वो specified limit कितना था? Specified limit of inflation. Okay, Harshad has come up with an answer. Anyone else? I hope you guys remember it. I hope you guys remember. 2 to 6. Cool. Very true. Only 2 answers. I was actually expecting many answers. Guys, I want all of you guys to answer. Come on, be free in my lecture. Okay, and I don't want any other hesitation. Mehak, I guess, had made just Mehak ne sirf copy paste kiya Harshad ke answer ko. I don't see even a difference of a space or anything. But anyways, yeah, and let's continue with that. The next is framework in India. उसमें हम लोगों ने monetary policy committee के बारे में समझा था. Then there was tools. Can you name me 1 or 2 tools जो हम लोगों ने वो टाइम पे डिस्कस किए थे? Just to brush up your minds. 1-2 tools जो हम लोगों ने वो टाइम पे डिस्कस किए थे. Okay. Ishwari has come up with one. CRR और दूसरा कौन सा था? SLR. Third third, someone else. CRR, SLR छोड़ के दूसरा कौन सा था? Repo rate, reverse repo rate. Okay, let me just ask you quickly few questions. Let me quickly ask you a few questions. Okay, tell me the rate at which the RBI will borrow from the banks. The interest rate at which the RBI will borrow from the banks. Quickly, okay. Correct, Harshit, you are correct. Everyone else, I want you guys to answer too. Okay, Shripad, your answer is okay. Yes, I guess your answer is correct. Your answer is correct. There was someone who said repo rate. Okay, Vedant said repo rate. It's not repo rate. It's reverse repo. Vedant, it's reverse repo. Remember this reverse repo rate. Repo rate matlab kya? It is the rate at which the banks will borrow from the RBI. We had invested a lot of time because this is a fundamentals. Ye bahut fundamentals. In fact, when you will come into the general lectures, we tend to discuss the previous questions also. I tend to discuss the previous questions also in the general lectures. So at that point of time, you will understand what is the significance of understanding conceptually all these topics. Ye conceptually samajhna kitna important. Fine. So that was something which we had discussed earlier. And moving ahead, going to the next part, impacts of inflation. Ye hum log ne impacts of monetary policy. इसमें क्या क्या पढ़ा था? Just I'm just asking you a question again. You guys answer me. क्या है उसका आंसर क्या है? ठीक है. The question is, if the CRR in an economy is increased, what will happen to the money supply in the economy? If CRR is increased by Monetary Policy Committee, what will happen to the money supply? Oh, I'm really happy all of you guys are coming up with the correct answer. If CRR is increased, the money supply will decrease. All of you guys are coming up. Okay, now here comes a trick question. If the repo rate in an economy is increased, what will happen to the money supply? CRR increase, you said decrease. But if repo rate is increased, what will happen to the money supply? Come on. Okay. So it is not actually a trick question. All of you guys answered very correct. It's nothing but decrease in the money supply in the economy. So that's nice. That's good. You are understanding. You are linking the topics. Really great. Okay, let's move on. The next is, even every time a rate increases, money supply decreases. Very true. Harshit gave a general rule. Yes, it is correct. In fact, it is correct for each of these. SLR, CRR जो आपने पढ़े उसके सारे के लिए correct है. SLR, CRR, bank rate. Sorry, bank rate नहीं दिया आपने. But SLR, CRR, repo rate and reverse repo rate and OMO ये सब केस में ऐसा ही है. That if the rate is increased, we tend to see that the money supply in the economy is decreasing. Correct. All of you. Harshit is very correct in this regards. Okay. Next we had, I guess last lecture and last to last lecture we had devoted our time in understanding the concept of national income. Let's just revise it quickly. ठीक है, national income क्या था? ये topic में हम लोगों ने पहले तो discuss किया what is national income, what is its meaning, and the four terms क्या था? GDP, NDP, GNP, NNP. GDP, NDP, GNP, NNP. ये चार term हम लोगों ने पढ़े थे. Now again here also I'll be asking you quick rapid fire type of questions that which you tend to see in the coffee with Karan. ठीक है, उसमें जो हम लोग rapid fire देखते हैं, I am again asking you a question. Tell me quickly, what is to be subtracted when going from gross to net? What is to be subtracted from when going from gross to net? Come on, quickly, all of you guys. We have discussed this earlier. Vedant, Siddhi, Manas, Saloni, Ishwari, all of you guys are coming up with the correct answer. Very true. Rupesh, Simran, shout out to all of you guys. You're coming up with the correct answer. That's the appreciation. The next question. Come on, be prepared for the next question. The next question is, what is to be added or subtracted when shifting from domestic to national? When shifting from domestic to national, what is to be added or subtracted? Okay, NFIA. Okay, Vedant has given a short form. Correct. Or kya? Everyone, all of you guys. Okay, Harshit says उन्होंने full form बोला. Net income from abroad. Yes, that's the answer. Saloni, Siddhi, Harshit, Vedant, Tejaswini. All of you guys are correct. Yes, it is net income. It's not national income from abroad, Siddhi. It's net income from abroad. Why do we say net? Because we consider both sides. We consider outgoing as well as incoming. Fine. So it is net income from abroad. दोनों outgoing, incoming. जो भी net बचता है, that is either added or subtracted. ठीक है. तो वो सारी चीजें हम लोगों ने देखी थी. When you go from domestic to national, you have to add or subtract net income from abroad. When you go from gross to net, you have to add or subtract depreciation. So this is, I'm glad you guys are thorough with this topic. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to the next. Okay, this was something GDP deflator. ये हम लोगों ने last time किया था. And this was something जो आगे भी हम लोगों ने पढ़ा था जब भी inflation का topic कर रहे थे, how it is measured. So GDP deflator, just tell me GDP deflator. I'll tell you it is a ratio. अगर ये ratio है, अगर GDP deflator ratio है, तो numerator में क्या था? Numerator में क्या आएगा? GDP deflator में GDP deflator is a ratio. We had discussed this last time. Numerator में क्या आएगा उसका? Come on. Real GDP, okay, fine. Not actually, I was okay. Harshad is coming up with correct answer. Mehak came up with the correct answer. Sanmi, Saloni, yes, all of you guys are correct. Not real GDP actually, Vedant. It's not real GDP. It's not real GDP. And Saloni, it's not constant rate. It's not constant price. Rather, it is current. Current. Remember क्या था? हम लोगों ने ये पहले real, although Vedant you connected with real, ये हम लोगों ने पहले discuss किया था. And let me just remind you, ये क्या था? हम लोगों ने कुछ ऐसा draw किया था. Let me show you here itself, so that you remember. और भूलना नहीं है ये सारे topics which we are discussing here. You are not supposed to forget this. ठीक है? Imbibe this in your mind. Imbibe this in your brains. ठीक है? क्या discuss किया था? हम लोगों ने कुछ तो ऐसा देखा था that when you remove nominal में से, when you remove inflation, you get what? You get real. ये हम लोगों ने देखा था. And last time ये nominal में से inflation निकालना and you getting real, ये हम लोगों ने बहुत पहले देखा था इन्फ्लेशन के टाइम में. और लास्ट टाइम हम लोगों ने क्या देखा था? हम लोगों ने ऐसा देखा था दैट फ्रॉम करंट if you remove inflation from current, if you remove inflation, what you get is constant. What you get is constant. So ये हम लोग ने मतलब from nominal to real, if you have to go, you have to remove inflation. From current to constant, if you have to go, you have to remove inflation. ये हम लोग ने deduce किया था last time. And then we are linked कि हाँ ये दोनों same लगता है, ये दोनों same लगता है. ऐसे करके हम लोगों ने लिंक किया था. So Vedant, if you are saying it's real in the numerator, no, actually it's not real. It's rather nominal in the numerator. Or you can see, if you had to come up with a proper correct answer, you should have said current. So it is current in the numerator, current GDP divided by constant GDP. Current GDP by constant GDP. And we know the only factor which makes a difference between current and constant, the only factor which makes a difference is nothing but inflation. So when we divide this, we get a rate of inflation. ये कुछ याद आ रहा है? धुंधला से तुम लोग सब छोटे थे, ठीक है? बचपन में हम लोगों ने कभी किया था, ठीक है? So current divided by constant, you get what? You get inflation. And inflation, suppose one is, I mean GDP deflator, suppose one it indicates what? That there is no price rise in the economy. If the GDP deflator is 2, it shows that the price rise has happened by 2, by a factor of 2. मतलब price rise is multiplied by 2. Fine. ऐसे ही, if we say that GDP deflator is 4, we say that the price is multiplied by 4. Fine. So ये हम लोग डिस्कस किया था. In fact, we had taken a very detailed example also. I hope you remember वो कि एक country है, उसमें सिर्फ 10 कार बन रहे हैं, ऐसे कुछ तो हम लोगों ने एग्जाम्पल गिना था, ठीक है? और ऐसा we had drawn a table that 10 cars, ठीक है? उसका पहले प्राइस कितना था? 15 था. ऐसा कुछ हम लोगों ने एग्जाम्पल वगैरह गिना था. Do you remember this? All of you guys? If yes, Wadia. Ravi remembers Republic of Wadia. Nice that. At least he remembers this. Ahmadinejad. नहीं क्या था वो नाम? What was the name of the protagonist? General what? Anyways, chalo, we are buttifying from the topic. Aladdin. Yes, Aladdin. How could I forget that? So cool. I guess all of you guys have seen that. Let's move on. Let's go to the next part. Okay, this was something which we had just begun with. We had just started with last time. ये topic में हम लोगों ने detail में लिखा नहीं था. And before even going to this topic, let me make you understand that अभी तक हम लोगों ने जो किया, हम लोगों ने क्या किया था? हम लोगों ने इकोनॉमिक्स का हार्डकोर पार्ट किया. बट क्या आपके सिलेबस में इकोनॉमिक्स मेंशन? जस्ट अ सेकंड, समवन देयर इन द वेटिंग रूम. I keep on getting this continuous notification. It distracts me actually. But anyways, yes, what were we discussing? We are discussing that until now what we have discussed is hardcore economics. And आपके सिलेबस में सिर्फ इकोनॉमिक्स मेंशन नहीं किया है. Your syllabus mentions economy. And if you remember the first lecture which we had, उसमें हम लोगों ने syllabus भी देखा था, previous years questions भी देखे थे. The questions are never restricted to these hardcore topics of economics. The questions also include what? The questions also include those type of topics which are more human side of economics. They are more human side of economics. So they tend to ask you questions on topics like poverty. They tend to ask you questions on topics like human development. They tend to ask you questions on topics like employment. Fine. So these and health, apart like health is something which is of the primary concern right now. Then comes education. So ये सारे topics है जिसके ऊपर they tend to ask you questions or which shows the human side of economics, and you have to be like really well prepared in this side also. Why? Because ये सब topics may or may not be asked in the prelims, but rest assured you cannot write a very satisfactory mains answer without knowing these topics, because बहुत सारे questions इससे linked होते हैं, बहुत सारे questions इससे linked होते हैं. You don't believe me? Have a look at 2015's mains paper. In fact, all the 4 papers you will be able to find the topic poverty. उसके ऊपर mains में question आया है. कहा GS पेपर 1 में आया, GS पेपर 1 में, जहाँ पे आपका जो सोसाइटी वाला पार्ट है, सोशियोलॉजी वाला पार्ट है, वो सोसाइटी वाले पार्ट में है. GS पेपर 2 में आया, जहाँ पे आपका पॉलिटी आता है, बेसिकली पॉलिटिकल एंड पॉलिटी आएगा और उसमें IR भी आता है. बट देन पॉलिटी के साथ साथ उसमें NGOs वगैरह आता है, सेल्फ हेल्प ग्रुप वगैरह आता है, उसमें भी पॉवर्टी का टॉपिक है. एंड इन GS पेपर 3 मतलब जो अपना इकोनॉमी है, इकोनॉमी में पॉवर्टी का क्वेश्चन आया है, वो पर्टिकुलर ईयर आया है. एंड अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस, इवन इफ यू सी द essay paper every alternate years you will be able to find a question. Every alternate year sort of you will be able to find a question pertaining to economy and pertaining to poverty or inequality. So these topics, again, conceptual understanding is required. Not many questions in the prelims, but unless you understand this topic, you won't be able to write satisfactory mains answer. ऐसा नहीं है कि prelims में questions आए नहीं है, आए हैं questions, prelims में भी आए, but then not that frequent as the way we used to see the previous years. जो भी previous topics पढ़े थे उसके बहुत ज़्यादा frequent questions आए हैं. Fine. Moving on, going to the next part. Let's look at what the topics we'll be discussing today. Now, since this is a part of poverty, there's a part of poverty. There is today. It is more like the thing which I guess all of you guys will be aware of, and all of you guys will be able to answer. So this is that kind of thing in which we are more supposed to have a look at the topics and have a understanding of it. There is not much of part in which we will be writing a lot of figures and facts and all. वो सब उसमें नहीं आएगा. Okay, conceptual understanding as and when required, I'll of course give it to you. But then apart from this, there's a lot of things which you will have to make the running notes of. Try making running notes of these. Fine, try making running notes of these. And if you want me to wait on a particular slide, unless you have made the notes of that particular slide, you can always ask me to do that. Fine, is that okay? Have we understood whatever we have discussed until now? If yes, type clear in the chat box. I want all of you guys to shout out clear in the chat box. Great, great. Nice, nice. So let's move on. Let's start with the topic of poverty and let's try to understand this. Okay, so the contents for today, आज करने क्या वाले हैं, poverty तो topic ले लिया है, we will be discussing poverty, ठीक है, but the contents for today and understanding the topic of poverty, what all things we'll have to understand. First of all, we'll have to think, understand that what is poverty. Poverty होता क्या है, वो पहली चीज, ठीक है. Then comes the types of poverty. The second will be types of poverty. So poverty are of different types. Not difficult to understand, very simple. But remember, इसमें जो भी words वगैरह use करेंगे, if we use these words, these kind of technical words in the examination, it will always be great. Like it will be appreciated by the examiner. It will be appreciated. This will show that you know the topic and then you are writing about it. This because poverty के बारे में तो कोई भी, if I ask a layman, everyone will be able to write about it. But then if you use, if you have studied about poverty and if you use technical jargons for that, that will be of a great help when you are writing the mains answer. That will distinguish between you as a very legitimate candidate and the others who may not possibly be that serious. Fine. The next is poverty cycle. The next we'll be discussing about is poverty cycle. क्या होता है poverty cycle? It is also called as poverty circle. It is also called as vicious cycle of poverty. Okay, so that is also something which we'll try to understand the course of the lecture today. Apart from this, there'll be something called as associated terms. Associated terms, her chapter mein, like even in the case of inflation, in the case of monetary policy, in the case of, in the case of the last, which was national income, उसमें भी हम लोगों ने associated terms वगैरह किए. GDP deflator was one amongst them. ठीक है. So ये सारे terms, associated terms, सारे lectures में आएंगे almost. And in this case also, we'll try to understand what are the terms associated with poverty. The next topic we'll be dealing with is strategies. Okay, just someone there in the waiting room. Okay, strategies and government steps for its eradication. Poverty eradication के लिए, poverty को, in order to remove poverty out of the country, what all steps the government has taken, what all steps can further possibly be taken. ठीक है, वो सारी चीजें we'll try to understand. And the last part, beyond doubt, will be the part of Q&A. Now Q&A is something which is very important because this is the time I feel our class is the most vibrant. We tend to ask any kind of question. All of you guys, in fact, few times I guess we have also discussed the current affairs topics in the Q&A wala part. Okay, but then let's keep the Q&A wala part as it is. Okay, I will always encourage this kind of vibrant discussion between you and me in the Q&A wala part. Okay, वहाँ पे हम लोग any topic, even if current affairs or anything pertaining to any other subject, if you want me to help you with, we'll discuss that. Okay, we'll devote somewhere near 10-15 minutes of our discussion of our lecture for that. Okay, moving ahead. Yes, starting with the part of what is poverty. Starting with the topic of what is poverty. इससे चालू करते हैं, ठीक है? And yes, ये I guess इतना हम लोगों ने last time किया था. What is poverty? I had asked you, and all of you guys seen that there is depreciation. There is deprivation and there is lack of accessible financial resources. ठीक है, तो ये सारी चीजें हम लोगों ने पढ़ी थी. And finally, we had come to the conclusion that this is the definition of poverty. Poverty is a state or a condition in which a person or a community lacks the financial resources. The person or the community lacks the financial resources and essentials to enjoy a minimum standard of life and well-being that's considered acceptable in the society. That is considered acceptable in the society. Fine. So ये जो definition of poverty, समझो ये बात कि there is an acceptable level, there is an acceptable standard of living, ठीक है, in the society. And if you are not able to reach that particular level, then also you are said to be poor. ऐसा नहीं है कि आपको सिर्फ खाना मिल गया then you are not poor. ऐसा नहीं है. Only accessibility of food is not enough. You need to have accessibility to many things, especially accessibility to those things which will ensure that you have a standard of living comparable to the others who are living in the same society. Fine. अभी ये तो हमारे understanding के लिए था. This was the definition of poverty for our understanding. But the definition which we possibly will be writing in the exam, if at all a question is asked, will be the definition given by World Bank. ठीक है, World Bank क्या बोलते हैं? World Bank says poverty is deprivation in all well-being and forgive me. World Bank says poverty is deprivation in well-being and is multidimensional. And it is multidimensional. Now, there is a term called as multidimensional poverty. We'll discuss that in the course of the lecture. Okay, but then try to understand. World Bank very clearly says poverty is unidimensional नहीं है. Poverty is not just deprivation of wealth. Poverty can be deprivation of many things. Okay, so that's what World Bank is saying. More about this multidimensionality, कैसा होता है poverty का. Okay, that we'll discuss in the course of the lecture. Then it includes low incomes and inability to acquire the basic goods and services necessary for survival with dignity. It includes what? It includes low incomes and inability. So first of all, there is no low income. Besides, there is inability to acquire basic goods and services necessary for survival with dignity. Necessary for survival with dignity. Can anyone tell me, again, on the same tone, the same lines, have you read anything like survival with dignity? Have you read this in any other subject? Any other subject of your UPSC syllabus? The idea of survival with dignity. Can anyone give me a particular part of any other subject? Very crucial, something which all of you guys should know about. Survival with dignity. Come on. Okay, कहाँ पे? Ishwari says polity. Polity में कहाँ पे? Where exactly? Okay, Nakul says fundamental rights. Which fundamental rights are you talking about? Okay, Ishwari also say rights, but then which one? Which one? Even Sai is also saying fundamental rights. Which exactly? Come on. Survival with dignity. They are saying survival with dignity. कहाँ पे पढ़ा है हमने? अगर न्यूज़पेपर्स देख रहे हो, न्यूज़पेपर्स में आए दिन we keep on looking at that. We keep on looking at that particular survival with dignity वाला part. कहाँ पे? You have come to a proper conclusion, but where exactly? Human rights? Yes, Ravi, it is human rights. It is fundamental rights. Which fundamental right are you talking about? Equality of backward classes. Dhruv is saying equality of backward classes. See, that also involves survival with dignity, but categorically, it's not mentioned in your constitution. Whereas the part of survival with dignity or life with dignity, ये आपके उसमें mention किया गया. It's categorically mentioned in one of the articles of fundamental rights of polity. Yes, which article it is, Ravi? which article it is? Right to life, personal liberty, and basically kya personal. See, try to understand. If you read that entire article, you'll realize this thing. It very categorically says Article 21. Yes, true that it's Article 21. No, it's Article 21. Sana says it is Article 21. Nakul article. Now, do you realize it's saying right to life with dignity? Right to life with dignity. Okay, that's in fact. Have you heard of something called as the Aruna Shanbag case? Aruna Shanbag case. सुना है आपने इसके बारे में? Have you heard? Ravi Singh. Yep. Ashit says no. Aruna Shanbag case. Okay, few have heard, few have not heard. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's do one thing. Okay, many of you guys are saying no. Let's do one thing. In the tail end of the lecture, when we'll be giving some amount of time, I mean, जब भी हम लोग Q&A वाले part पे आएंगे, ठीक है? Or else, in the end of the lecture, you remind me about Aruna Shanbag case, very important, very crucial case. It will tell you about survival with dignity. का मतलब क्या होता है? ठीक है? And few of you guys already know about this. It's basically about what? It's basically a topic. It's basically about topic. जो इस line पे argue करता है that if you're not surviving with dignity, you are not surviving at all. मतलब mere living is not living. Living with dignity is something which is called as life. Are you getting it? This were the arguments made by the lawyer in the court, and I'll discuss about that. Just remind me about that. Aruna Shanbag case. We'll discuss more in this. But try to understand, poverty is something which deprives you of your Article 51. Article 21. Article 21 says right to life with dignity, right to life with proper respect. That is what is required, and that is what has to be upheld. Article 21 is something which is the most important fundamental right. Of course, B.R. Ambedkar, I mean, Dr. Ambedkar would disagree. He had said Article 32 was the most important article, but then Article 21 is equally important, if not less. Fine? Yes. And one such quote which you have already seen in the previous year's economy paper, in the previous year's essay paper, and something which you can use in the subsequent ethics and essay papers, whichever you will be giving. Okay, poverty is the worst form of violence. Of course, if you're not given those basic goods and services necessary for survival with dignity, if you're not given those goods necessary for survival with dignity, basically your survival is threatened. In other words, you are, like violence has been committed on you. That's what the idea. And who had given this? This is not some random quote, which is usually we tend to see these days on internet के किसी का भी फोटो लगा के कुछ भी कोड बोल दिया तो वो ऐसा हो जाता है. नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है. Authentically given by Mahatma Gandhi, the father of the nation. क्या बोला था उन्होंने? Poverty is the worst form of violence. Remember this quote. You have to use this in the exam as and when required. Fine. Yes. Moving to the next part. Let's try to understand the next topic. The next topic is about types of poverty. Now, I'll ask you this question. How will you categorize poverty into different types? Can anyone give me? Okay, Vedant is saying two. Kaise? How will you categorize poverty into different types? Can any of you guys guess? Any guesses? Any guess will do. Okay, Simran is saying rural poverty, and of course, other will be urban poverty, right? Okay. Siddhi is saying absolute. Vedant is saying absolute relative. Nakul says absolute relative. Few of you guys aware. Simran says rural, urban. To that, Siddhi again says relative. Correct. Okay, Sana is saying below poverty line, above poverty line. Okay, cool. That's also nice. That's something which we tend to use. I mean, the government uses in its official documents the word BPL, the word APL, all these words. True that. Kunal also says rural poverty. Okay. Now, let me. Vedangi says situational poverty, and I'm really impressed by the kind of answers you are coming up. I'm really impressed. Okay, let's do one thing. Let's put a break here. Let me show you what exactly it is. Few of you guys have answered correctly. Few of you guys have thought on the lines on which we should actually think. Urine also says generational poverty. Correct. True that. Let's try to understand this. So, the idea of poverty can be categorized as absolute and relative. Now, few of you guys have already answered absolute and relative. दोनों में difference क्या है? Absolute क्या होता है और relative क्या होता है? Let's read about this and then I'll tell you exactly what the difference between both of them is. Guys, if you want me to wait on a particular slide, do let me know. Anyways, yes, so we were discussing about absolute poverty. Absolute poverty matlab kya? Minimum amount of income needed to meet the minimum requirements for one or more basic living needs over an extended period of time. Over an extended period of time. Matlab minimum amount of income needed to meet the minimum requirements. Minimum requirements meet करने के लिए minimum amount of income कितना चाहिए, ठीक है? That over an extended period of time, that is called as absolute poverty. ठीक है? For example, food, clothing, shelter, these are the minimum amount of requirements. और उसके लिए minimum income कितना चाहिए? That is nothing but absolute poverty. Fine. And try to understand this. Try to understand this. This is a bit different from the next term. Next term may be relative poverty. Relative poverty matlab kya? Relative poverty. It happens when people in a country do not enjoy a certain minimum level of living standards as compared to, now this is something which is to be highlighted here, as compared to the rest of the population. Fine. As compared to the rest of the population. matlab यहाँ पे there was no sort of comparison. यहाँ पे क्या बोल रहे थे? Minimum, in case of absolute poverty, they were saying minimum amount of income required. In case of absolute poverty, they were saying minimum amount of income required to meet the minimum to meet the minimum needs. Okay, minimum basic living needs. जबकि relative poverty में ऐसा बोल रहे हैं that minimum amount of income required to meet certain minimum level of living standards as compared to the others. So try to understand relative मतलब क्या? It is in comparison to, in relation to the rest of the population. The rest of the population. It varies from country to country, closely associated with inequality, and Gini coefficient can be used to measure this. Gini coefficient can be used to measure this. I'll tell you, I will discuss all of these stuff. Try to understand this. India is a country which is desperately facing, primarily, it is facing the crisis of which type of poverty? It is facing the crisis of absolute poverty. Why? Absolute poverty kya hota hai? Absolute poverty in which there are still segments of society, there are still people in the country who do not have basic minimum food, who do not have the basic minimum calorie intake, who do not have basic clothing for clothing required to get their bodies covered, the minimum amount of shelter, the bare minimum requirement of shelters to have a roof on their head. ठीक है, so ये सारी चीजें आज भी ये country ये सारी चीजों के even after like what 73 years I guess 72 73 years we have already done after our independence. It's 73 years already. Within 2 years we'll be having 75 years of independence. आज भी section of society, आज भी some parts of the country we see people still dying of hunger, still not having enough clothes, still not having proper shelter. Fine, so that is nothing but what? That is nothing but an example of absolute poverty. Okay. On the other hand, in the Western economies, we have seen that many Western economies have done relatively well. They have ensured this thing that people there dying because of hunger is reduced drastically. So there are barely any people there dying because of hunger. There are hardly any people there who do not have shelter homes. Okay. Some NGOs in fact run shelter homes also there. Okay. There are hardly any people who may not have these basic needs. What are they facing the problem of? They are actually facing the problem of not absolute poverty. They have already achieved absolute poverty for all of its sections of society. But is that it? No, they have to now face the problem of, in fact, they are now facing the problem of relative poverty. Relative poverty मतलब क्या? कि अभी सब लोगों के पास उतना पैसा नहीं है जो, I mean, which should be equal for everyone. Okay, the amount of money with everyone right now is very inadequate and it's very it's not proportionally distributed. Fine, few may have a large amount of wealth, and the others may have barely anything required for their survival. They have wealth, they can meet their basic needs, but they do not have any amount of wealth in comparison to the others who are living a fabulous life, who are living a very flamboyant life. Fine. So they are actually not facing a problem of poverty. They are facing, if you think properly, they are facing the problem of what? They are facing the problem of inequality. Okay, is there any country in the world which is not facing any of these problems? Harshad, let me tell you, there is no country in the world who is not facing any of these poverties. Every country of the world have its own share of problems. Every country of the world is facing either absolute poverty or relative poverty. Why I am saying this? Because अगर suppose कोई ऐसा country होता जिसमें relative poverty भी zero होता था और absolute poverty भी zero होता था, वो country में the Gini coefficient, GINI. Remember this term, Gini coefficient. We'll discuss this later, but then understand the Gini coefficient would have been zero. और ऐसा एक भी कंट्री नहीं है अक्रॉस द वर्ल्ड जहां पे गिनी कोएफिशिएंट जीरो है, ऐसा एक भी कंट्री नहीं है. यस, देयर आर फ्यू कंट्रीज जहां पे ये टर्म, ये कैलकुलेशन ऑफ दिस टर्म गिनी कोएफिशिएंट कम्स क्लोजर टू जीरो मतलब थोड़ा इक्वालिटी ज्यादा है वहां पे, बट ऐसा कोई कंट्री नहीं है जहां पे परफेक्ट इक्वालिटी और no one dying of hunger, no one having everyone is having proper shelter, everyone is having proper clothing. ऐसा कोई कंट्री नहीं है जिसमें ये सब कुछ चीजें 100% है. Every country is striving for this, but no one has reached there yet. Cool, I can tell you in general, the Nordic countries. Now, can anyone tell me what Nordic countries are? Okay, what about Scandinavian? Ravi also says Scandinavian countries. Can anyone tell me what Nordic countries are or Scandinavian countries are? Which countries comes under Nordic or Scandinavian countries? They are somewhere closer to this. Okay, tell me what Nordic or Scandinavian countries are. Come on, write in the chat box. Fine. Now we have said Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland. These are the countries which are Scandinavian countries. Okay. Can anyone tell me what is the difference between Nordic countries and Scandinavian countries? What exactly is the difference between both? Any of you guys? The difference between Nordic and Scandinavian countries. Okay, let's do one thing. Even ask this to me in the last part, since it directly does not deal with economy, but then ask this again. Okay, it includes Greenland also. Sunny says Greenland. Okay, we'll discuss about this, Sunny. We'll discuss about this, and remind me to even discuss about what is Nordic countries and what is Scandinavian countries. The second thing which we'll be discussing is Aruna Shanbhag case. Okay, so ये दो चीज हम लोग discuss करेंगे. Fine. So let me tell you this. Basically, the countries. When I say Nordic or Scandinavian countries, there is a not much of a difference, but small difference. But Nordic or Scandinavian countries were basically वो countries which come in northern Europe, northern side of Europe. ठीक है, northern Europe मतलब UK, France, वो सब उसके ऊपर, UK, France, Germany, उन सब के ऊपर. So क्या क्या आता है? As Ravi has already mentioned, Sweden उसमें आएगा, Norway आएगा, Denmark आएगा, Finland आएगा. All these countries are the countries which are categorized in Nordic or Scandinavian countries. We'll see what the difference is. Small difference, just a little bit of difference, but we'll discuss that in the Q&A wala part. Okay, North Atlantic. You can say yes, Vedangi, very true. It's North Atlantic or part. To be more precise, you can say these are the countries basically surrounded by Baltic Sea or the North Sea. Baltic Sea or the North Sea. These are the countries which are surrounded by that. Fine. Yes. Moving on. Moving to the next part. I hope you have understood relative poverty. Achha, we have written this. It varies from country to country. Why? Because in one country we may see for example, US may a person who is earning even mediocre amount of wealth will be a guy who will be categorized as rich in India. Are you getting it? So since the standard of living changes from country to country, we say that the idea of relative poverty changes from country to country. Just a second, someone there in the waiting room. Then, fine. So this is closely associated with inequality and all. So we have clearly understood the concept of and the topic of absolute poverty and relative poverty. Now moving on to the next type. The next type is, as few of you guys had already mentioned about, the next type is about situational poverty. The next is situational poverty. And then comes something called as generational poverty. The one is situational and the other is generational poverty. अब क्या होता है situational poverty और क्या होता है generational poverty? अभी दोनों में difference यही है, that at times when we see a family is in poor, the family may be in poverty because of some or the other situation. For example, right now there is a very big natural calamity happening in one part of the country. Can anyone tell me which calamity in which part of the country? Okay, क्या हो रहा है? Very true. Assam floods. All of you guys are saying Assam floods. I'm glad that you guys are aware about this, because in the prime time news, if you see, there is no mention of Assam floods, Bihar floods, or even Nagaland floods. No one is mentioning about that. I'm glad that you are aware about this. But anyways, yes, there is 35 lakh people affected. I guess there was some 150 or some people also who had died in Assam, and some 90, around 90 people who died in Bihar and all. So there are people, there are fatalities also. Okay, Kaziranga National Park is also submerged. The rhinos ka bhi maut hua hai. The one-horned rhinos, the indigenous species of India, they have also died. Okay, Ravi is saying, what about communist countries? The ideology itself encourages economic equality. Ravi, very true. Communist countries encourage this kind of ideology, but can you name me can any of you guys name me one country which you can say is entirely communist, or even if not communist, it is socialist, entirely socialist? Any of you guys can give me an example of that? Come on. Any country. Can you name a single country which you can very convincingly say communist country? There are 5 communist countries. Okay, tell me which 5. Ravi is saying 5 communist countries. China, okay. Vedangi is saying Russia, PRC, Vietnam, Cuba. All of you guys are coming up. Okay, okay. Now I have a very strong, but they don't follow the true ideology. In fact, Ravi itself mentioned the argument which I was going to say from my side. Yes, all of you guys are correct. All of you guys are mentioning the countries which are communist countries. But can you very convincingly say that they are actually, apart from just having the name communist in the country's name, apart from that, are they actually following the communist ideology? Are they actually following the communist ideology? Can you say this? No, no, they are not. So, no, communist nahi. Are they even following the socialist ideology? Are they even following the socialist ideology? Can you say this? For example, Russia. Russia calls itself Soviet. I mean, earlier it used to be USSR. Okay. So Soviet tha, socialist Soviet tha. So Russia very humbly calls itself socialist. But Russia, can you in today's time, can you call Russia as a socialist country? No, unfortunately, no. Yes, Ravi, as you mentioned, just a second. Ravi, as you mentioned, ये वो countries है जो कम्युनिस्ट अपने नाम में लगा दे या फिर सोशलिस्ट अपने नाम में सोशलिस्ट वगैरह लगाएंगे. They are not actually following the same ideology. चाइना ने तो कब का अपना कम्युनिस्ट आइडियोलॉजी छोड़ दिया. इनफैक्ट 1990s, precisely 1991, India went for economic reforms. India went for economic reforms 1991. China जो खुद को कम्युनिस्ट कंट्री बोलता था वो 10 साल पहले इकोनॉमिक रिफॉर्म्स कर लिए. It reached economic reforms in fact even prior to that. Yes, Ravi says Maoist. जो माओ का it's Maoist, very true. और माओ की आइडियोलॉजी को वो फॉलो कर रहे हैं. They are not actually following the idea of communism. They have left the idea of communism way behind. In fact, you can say it is very much more closer to capitalism today than being communist. It's not communist, you can say, just in the political spirit, but not in the spirit of economy. They are not. They in the sphere of economy, they are more capitalist than being communist. Fine. Okay. Now tell me this. Just again a random question which just came up in our discussion. Any of you guys know the difference between socialist and communist? Socialist or communist, ye the word you may have heard of. Can you tell me exactly the difference between socialist and communist? Okay, fine. Few of you guys are saying yes. Let's do one thing. Few of you guys, since you guys are saying yes, I'll give you a chance to unmute yourself because iska thoda explanation may be a bit tedious to type. Okay, Gayatri has said yes. Gayatri, will you like to speak up? Should I unmute you or Ravi? Any of you guys? Just ping me. I'll unmute you. Okay. Gayatri says she's more convenient. I guess some headphones problem or something. Anyways, can any of you guys either type or tell me? You can raise your hand. I'll let you unmute unmute yourself. Either type or tell me the difference between socialism and communism. The difference between socialism and communism. You tend to hear these terms, but what exactly is the difference between both? Maybe polity वाले part में शायद से discuss हुआ रहेगा. Yes, Ravi. Let's. In communism, all the resources and industry is under state control, and in socialism, come on. Let's do one thing till the time they are writing the answers. or till the time they're typing the answers, let's do one thing. Let's keep on going ahead with the lecture series. Or else let's do one thing. शायद से ये communism, socialism again ये end में discussion करेंगे because as I expected ये थोड़ा time लगेगा type वगैरह करने के लिए time लगेगा. Okay, Vedangi says citizens share equal economic resources in socialism. Vedangi says citizens share equal economic resources in socialism. But Vedangi, can you say this that citizens don't share economic resources in communism? Can you say this? Okay, under socialism, Vedan says, even Nakul has given an answer. Just a second, let me just hold up the chat box. In socialism, all resources should be divided between citizens equally. Okay, under socialism, property are owned by individuals. Properties are owned by individuals. Okay, socialism believes that the means of making, moving, trading wealth should be owned or controlled by the workers. Fine, few. See, all of you guys are giving either socialism or okay. Surely I'll explain. I'll explain. Okay, try to understand this. The primary, all of you guys are saying either socialism or communism, and whatever claims you are making about socialism, you cannot convincingly say okay, it's not for communism. Because socialism के लिए कह रहे हो, it is also valid for communism also. In very simple terms, if I tell you the difference, जो Karl Marx है अपनी जो book लिखी थी, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, ठीक है, we tend to they are interlinked. Yes, Ravi, they are interlinked. Okay, we tend to forget there was also someone called Friedrich, okay, along with Karl Marx, Friedrich Engels, ये दोनों ने मिलके socialism और communism का ideology बोला था. दोनों में difference ये है that communism is said to be the most ideal state of equality. Okay. And Karl Marx had said that to reach that ideal state, you will have to go through a path. The path is called socialism. Fine. So you can say this thing that communism and socialism both are related, as Ravi has said, both are interlinked, very true. But communism is said to be more ideal state, and the path to reach that ideal state is via socialism. Fine. So socialism, fine. Vedangi, socialism, freedom of religion is allowed. I guess it is more from country to country basis. Yes, freedom of religion is allowed, and try to understand basically to reach that ideal stage of communism, we go through a path for socialism. Now, जो Maoist China था, Maoist China was very deterministic China. It was very deterministic China कि हम लोग ऐसा करेंगे तो करेंगे ही. ठीक है, they had this kind of philosophies. ठीक है, they had something called as cultural revolution. ठीक है, they had something called as the backyard furnace. ऐसे करके इनके बहुत सारे philosophies थे. They had come up with land reforms, and that too violent one. Great leap forward philosophy. The Maoist China had great leap forward philosophy. ठीक है, तो बहुत सारे उन्होंने steps लिए with which they tried to reach that ideal state. They tried to reach, and they were very determined. That's the reason why they called themselves communist. Okay, जबकि every other country of the world be humble, and every other country of the world acknowledges. हाँ, भले वो अपने नाम में ऐसा aspire करने के लिए बोलेंगे कि that we will try to reach the state of communism, but every other country of the world recognizes and acknowledges oneself as socialist country. Can any of you guys give me one or two names of socialist figures in India also? Socialist, कोई socialism को follow करने वाला India में, कोई freedom fighter या anyone, any particular leader, you can say. One or two. The one who was following the idea of socialism, the one who was following the idea of, I mean, the one who were inclined there. Okay, let's do one thing. Let me ask you this rather than you answering. Tell me this: was Jawaharlal Nehru the person who was following the ideology of socialism? All of you guys are saying yes. Very true. Vedangi also says Subhash Chandra Bose. Can anyone tell Bhagat Singh? True that. Bhagat Singh. Annie Besant was Annie Besant. Have you heard of Annie Besant? Was she following socialism? Okay, you are saying yes. Was she the one who was following socialism? Cool. So fine. So many of you guys are coming with the correct answer. All these were the leaders who were Subhash Chandra Bose, take it Bhagat Singh, or take it Jawaharlal Nehru. All of them were following the idea of socialism. And that's the reason why in India also we see an inclination towards socialism. We have Chandrasekhar. I'm not sure about Chandrasekhar Azad. I'm not particularly. Yeah, actually he must have, because he was a part of HSRA, right? Hindustan Socialist Republican Association, started by Bhagat Singh. So even Chandrasekhar Azad, as Asha says, Chandrasekhar Azad, he must have also been socialist. Very true. So anyways, we have understood this. India also has an inclination towards socialism, and I mean, with the same spirit, we have at many parts in our constitution also. For example, in our preamble, we have the idea of socialism. We have also included, और बाद में 42nd Amendment Act से हम लोगों ने idea of socialism वगैरह ऐड किया था, ठीक है? But the spirit of socialism is already there in Article 39A, 39B, ठीक है? Article 40, 41, ये सारे में क्या था? ये सारे में socialist का philosophy अपने आ ही जाता है पॉलिटी में. 40, 41, all of you guys ऐसे, ठीक है? So इंडिया ने भी सोशलिज्म फॉलो करने का ट्राई किया, इंडिया ने भी इक्वालिटी पॉवर्टी वगैरह निकालने का ट्राई किया, बट वाज इंडिया एंटायरली सक्सेसफुल? इंडिया, आई मस्ट टेल यू, हैज बीन फेयरली सक्सेसफुल, but entirely अभी भी we are still struggling with poverty, and that to absolute poverty, that to absolute. So we have not even reached the status where we have to tackle more with relative poverty. We are still struggling with the factor of absolute poverty. Okay, क्या ऐसा क्यों? We'll discuss that in the subsequent slides. Anyways, let's discuss about situational poverty and generational poverty right now. Okay, situational poverty मतलब क्या होता है? Situational poverty मतलब situation. I mean, if you see a family and if you realize that the family was until now the family was well to do, the family was above poverty line and was able to meet its basic needs, but because of one particular reason, like the way we discussed, I asked you, but one particular or like untoward incidents, for example, the floods which came in Assam, the floods which came in Bihar or the northeast entire region, Bangladesh में बहुत सारे floods, उसकी वजह से वहाँ पे जो भी farmers वगैरह है, और anyways irrigation facility वहाँ पे इतना ज़्यादा है नहीं, वहाँ पे रेनफेड एग्रीकल्चर होता था, वो रेनफेड एग्रीकल्चर में भी इतना सारा डूब जाना, ठीक है, इतने सारे फार्मलैंड वगैरह डूब जाना, एंड अल्टीमेटली द फार्मर्स फीलिंग द फाइनेंशियल पेन्स ऑफ दैट, ठीक है. सो वो एक पर्टिकुलर रीजन की वजह से अभी तक जो फार्मर अबाव पॉवर्टी लाइन था, बट बिकॉज उसका ये टाइम पूरा फील्ड उसका फ्लड हो गया एंड इज नॉट एबल टू सर्वाइव फॉर हिज फैमिली, ठीक है, वो एक पर्टिकुलर सिचुएशन की वजह से वो और उसकी फैमिली हैज एंटर्ड इनटू पॉवर्टी, एंड दैट्स द सिचुएशन ऑफ व्हाट, that is the situation we call as situational poverty. Fine, let's read about situational poverty. Situational poverty hota kya hai? Fine, so situational poverty also it is called as transitory. इसमें क्या होता है? Poor because of some adversity. Example, earthquake, floods, droughts, healthcare, etc. ठीक है? Either some or the other adversity. Now it can also be healthcare adversity. It can also be healthcare adversity. Are you aware that I was reading the newspaper the other day and I realized that almost around 60% of healthcare expenses in Indian households happens out of pocket. Out of pocket expenses होता है, ठीक है, मतलब neither the government helps, neither they have the insurance for that, ठीक है. So अगर ना insurance है ना government है and 60% of the expenses, इसमें से medicines का expenses सबसे ज्यादा था, 60% of the expenses are to be borne by the family out of the pocket. इसका मतलब क्या? A big amount of burden is on that particular family, ठीक है, for that healthcare. Just imagine there is a family of 5, ठीक है, 5 लोग हैं, बूढ़े माँ बाप, ठीक है, sort of the 3 Idiots वाला सीन, ठीक है, सीधा 90s के जमाने के घर पे हम लोग जा रहे हैं कि एक बूढ़े माँ बाप है, ठीक है, एक बिन ब्याही बहन है, कमों की शादी नहीं हो रही, ठीक है, और बाप को पैरालिसिस है, माँ टीचर थी बट बाद में माँ का भी जॉब छूट गया, ठीक है, और एक ही अर्निंग मेंबर था, ठीक है, एक ही अर्निंग मेंबर था, उसका नाम था राजू रस्तोगी. बट क्या हो गया, वो राजू रस्तोगी को भी कोविड हो गया, ठीक है, बिकॉज वन ऑफ द अदर रीजंस. वो एक अर्निंग मेंबर था, मतलब वो पास हो गया था, उसको प्लेसमेंट वगैरह हो गया, वो एक अर्निंग मेंबर था, बट उसको भी कोविड हो गया. अभी उसको कोविड हो गया, उसका मतलब क्या? ही वाज द सोल अर्निंग मेंबर अपॉन व्हिच देयर वर 4 डिपेंडेंट्स. उसको कुछ हो गया, उसके हेल्थ केयर एक्सपेंसेस वगैरह में पूरे फैमिली का फाइनेंशियल जो भी उसका रिपोजिटरी था, वो सारा फैमिली का फाइनेंशियल रिपोजिटरी उसको सिर्फ सर्वाइव करने में जा रहा है. Can ultimately, and the family enters into a situation of poverty. That is what is called as situational poverty or transitory poverty. We call it as a situational or transitory poverty. Example: earthquake, floods, droughts, which we see. People, when given time and help by the government, timely, okay, when given timely help by the government, can come out of this. Timely help बहुत important है. Right now, also the people who are suffering from floods in Assam and Bihar, our sympathies with them. But then, if they are given timely help by the government, maybe given, there is a scheme called as Pradhan Mantri. What is the name of the scheme? Pradhan Mantri National Agriculture Insurance Scheme. It is called in English. It is called National Agriculture Insurance Scheme. It is called as Pradhan Mantri Bima Fasal Bima Yojana. Yes, Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So under that Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, if their field is covered and under that, if the government gives them timely help कि तुम्हारे फील्ड में disaster management, I mean disaster हुआ है, flood आ गया और वो farmer को government ने timely help किया, so these kind of people can very easily be brought out of poverty. That's the reason why for every government of the world, if they have to make a strategy for poverty eradication in that particular country, they have to target the people who have been situationally poor. ठीक कोई situation की वजह से वो लोग poor हो गए because they are very easily with little amount of help from the government they can come out of poverty. Okay, this should be the first target. On the other hand, there are also families, there are also people who are generationally poor. Achha, before going to that, just a quick question. Can, apart from these incidents, apart from earthquake, floods, droughts, healthcare, can you give me any other instances जिसके वजह से एक family situational poverty में अंदर जा सकता है? Apart from floods, droughts, earthquakes, healthcare, expenses, कोई भी ऐसा दूसरा instance? Come on. Recession, okay, fine, you can say. Accident, ठीक है, वो भी healthcare हो गया. Loans, ठीक है, you can say that loans, that to what? Predatory loans. ठीक है, basically in debt trap. Manas says debt trap, correct? Inflation, fine. Basically, I guess with inflation, you're saying recession. Unemployment, हो सकता है, सही बात है. Death of the sole breadwinner. Okay, apart from this, can you think from any social point of view? Achha, tell me this. Is dowry, this social ill of dowry, can that be something which can be categorized as the reason for situational poverty? Can dowry be categorized as situational poverty? Yes. In the rural India, we are not aware, but these things are happening there in the rural India. Okay, the dowry is something which is a very big social ill, and especially the one जो women's होती है वहाँ पे, the unmarried women's, if they are supposed to be, if they have to be got married, उनके लिए उनके माँ बाप बहुत टाइम से डाउरी के लिए प्रिपेयर करते हैं और उससे भी ज्यादा डाउरी is being demanded, so they ultimately end up into debt trap. As someone had mentioned, loans, okay, they enter into debt trap. Okay, so just remember this kind of incidences and try to understand these are nothing but situational poverty. If we are able to stop them, कमों की शादी इसलिए नहीं हो रही. सही बात है, कमों की शादी इसलिए वो भी free. Okay, anyways, so yes, we are going into what? Generational poverty. Generational poverty मतलब क्या? Situational poverty ऐसा situation की वजह से कोई एक family poverty में जाए. Generational poverty मतलब वो भी गरीब, उसका father भी गरीब, उसका दादा भी गरीब, उसका great grandfather जो भी है, सारे everyone in the family runs into poverty. Okay, so that is called as generational poverty. Can any of you guys, of course we'll discuss about that, but can you give me a reason situation generational poverty में कोई बंदा है, why is he staying in that generational poverty वाला thing? Okay, you gave me the reason for situational poverty कि हाँ because of dowry or because of loans, accident, death of the sole breadwinner. उसकी वजह से Manas saying uneducation, yes, that can be one. Can categorize that. But what else? Rather than saying uneducation, can you say literacy, illiteracy, lack of skills? But then can't lack of skills be overcome? Can't illiteracy be overcome? Rituals like what? Haris, I want you to elaborate. Come on, run. Think. Rituals मतलब क्या? Superstition, same working sector, social beliefs like labor strength should be a labor. Okay, superstition maybe. Okay, let me tell you this. Think on the lines of social issues. Can you tell me this? Like, can caste issue be a reason for situational poverty? Caste issues? I guess someone, Ashwini, Ashwini had come closer to this. But then yes, can caste issue be categorized as something called as gender bias? You can say that even in some parts of the country, yes, gender bias is one of the reasons. Caste issue is one of the reasons. Labor strength should be a labor. Someone mentioned it, but rather, if I can refine the statement, can I say this thing that Dalit son, the regressive mindset which rural India has, that Dalit son should always be a Dalit and should not be allowed to go into a productive economic sector. Okay, so that is something which, unfortunately, in India's case, the generational poverty is intertwined with the caste-based social issues. Also, it is intertwined with the gender bias. Also, it is intertwined with communal issues. Okay, we also tend to find there is something called a Sachar committee report. Government ka hi committee tha. It was set up to see the backwardness it found in the one who used to followers of Islam. ठीक है, उनके social indicators कितने backwardness है, ठीक है, वो उसमें देखने उसको analyze करने के लिए there was something called Sacher committee report, और वो committee ने भी ऐसा बोला था that community, the one who are following Islam, many of them are under generational poverty. So communal can be one of the lines, caste can be one of them, gender can. Okay, in general, so ये सारी चीजें इंडिया में तो देखी गई है. Abroad भी there are many reasons for generational poverty. One of the primary being the tribal or the original inhabitants, of the India. For example, the Maori tribe or the Bendibu tribe of Africa. Okay, the also the Red Indians of USA. ठीक है, so ये सब क्या है, इंडिया के केस में बहुत सारे बिल्स, ठीक है, बिल्स वन ऑफ द सिचुएशनल पावर. बाद में देयर इज ओरांग ट्राइब्स, ठीक है. सो ऐसे बहुत सारे ट्राइब्स हैं which are there in India also, the tribal community which are there in India, who have been under generational poverty, they have been living in the forest heartlands of the country and they have been under generational poverty. Are you getting it? So let's read about this quickly. Okay, generational poverty, it is also called as chronic. इसको transitory कहते हैं, इसको chronic कहते हैं. और क्या? Poverty has been inherited to an individual from his family and from generations to generations. People seem to have no escape from it as they are trapped in a vicious cycle. Now, what is this vicious cycle? वो समझेंगे हम लोग. Okay, they are trapped in a vicious cycle. Okay, in India, it is more complicated by caste and communal factors. They are more complicated by caste and communal factors. There is something called a vicious cycle of poverty. Poverty is a vicious cycle. We'll discuss that. Have you understood this? Should I move to the next slide? If yes, type yes in the chat box. Just type yes in the chat box. Okay, Ashish, no. Ashish, just let me know when should I. Sure. There's someone whose name I'm not able to pronounce. Ishwanshi, I guess. Ishwanshi. Have I pronounced it correct? Okay, till the time they are copying it, fine. Till the time they are copying this, anything you have read in news or anything in any subject you want me to help you with, anything in economics you are stuck somewhere, if you have any doubt or something, we can discuss at that time. Let's not waste time. Anything if you want me to help you with, you can type. Till the time they are copying this, should I guess? Yes, anyone? Any doubts? AMA, ask me anything. Let's discuss about lot. There is some doubt, Ravi. Yes. Can saving too much money cause the recession? Ravi, you can, depends where are you saving. If you are saving in the bank, it may not. When you're saving in the bank, but if you're saving in a home, घर का locker, it may. Ravi, try to understand when you're saving in. Okay, Harshit says yeah. Fine, we'll switch. But let me just answer Ravi once. Ravi, try to understand that if you're saving at your home, if you're saving some amount of money at your home, you're not allowing that money to circulate in the economy. And when there is scarcity of money in an economy, when there is scarcity of money supply in economy, there is a possibility of recession. However, if you're already saving in some very productive asset, for example, if you're saving it in a bank account, bank will of course circulate the money. वो bank थोड़ी ऐसा बोलेगा कि ये पैसा मेरे पास रहेगा मैं किसको दूंगा. Bank will of course circulate the money. When the bank will circulate the money, then there is less possibility of recession. Because we are running on possibility. Okay, fine. Yes, Manas, very true. It's rolling. So let's move on. Just a second. Someone there in the waiting room. If no investment, it can cause recession. Yes, true that. Basically, it's vice versa. When people expect that there is going to be recession, people think of not investing right now. क्या मालूम उसमें invest करूँगा उसमें भी भाव गिर जाएंगे. ठीक है, शायद से वो returns देगा नहीं. So and when people think like this, they will not invest, and again recession is possible. So it's sort of a cycle here also. Okay, to ensure this
kind of thing doesn't happen in the economy, जानबूझ के गवर्नमेंट क्या करता है, मनी सप्लाई बढ़ाता है इकोनॉमी में, जानबूझ के गवर्नमेंट मनी सप्लाई इकोनॉमी में बढ़ाता है. ठीक है, कैसे बढ़ाएगा? बाय रिड्यूसिंग द रेट्स. द आरबीआई विल रिड्यूस द रेट्स, द गवर्नमेंट विल गिव टैक्स बेनिफिट्स एंड ऑल. सो बहुत सारी चीजें गवर्नमेंट ऐसे बेनिफिट करती है. ठीक है, आई गिव यू वन एग्जांपल. If you remember this, well and good. If you don't, it's all right. But last year, do you remember this? Government had given a big rebate on corporate tax. Government given a big rebate on corporate tax. ठीक है, क्या था उसका इंटेंशन? उसका इंटेंशन यही था कि जब भी अगर बड़ा रिबेट दिया जाए कॉर्पोरेट टैक्स में, तो गवर्नमेंट क्या कर रहा है? बेसिकली अपने पास पैसे कम ले रहा है. Government is allowing more amount of money to be kept with the companies, and when they will be keeping more amount of money kept with the companies, either it will be reserved, or I mean it will be reserved for future investment, or it will be given as dividends to the shareholders. Dividends दिया shareholders को, तो भी पैसा सर्कुलेट होता है इकोनॉमी में. अगर it is kept reserved for future investments and advancements, उसके लिए अगर रिजर्व किया तो भी it is getting invested in some of the other part of the economy. So that was one example of that. So government भी steps ले सकता है, monetary, I mean RBI भी step ले सकता है. Fine. So let's come back to the topic. We have discussed this. Let's come back to the topic. Let's move on. The next topic is about poverty cycle. So we just discussed in the previous slide the generational poverty. We had discussed about something called the poverty cycle. क्या होता है poverty cycle? Let's try to understand this. Basically, it's nothing but a vicious cycle in which a person who is poor, he tends to remain in poverty. A person who is poor, he tends to remain. And for removing the people who are primarily in this kind of vicious cycle of poverty, for removing the people from this poverty, we have to ensure some amount of external help. Now, that external help has to come from the government. Let's try to understand this. External help has to come from the government. Side. Okay. So this is nothing but the vicious cycle. Like, there are more complicated ones there on the internet as well as there in your books. But this is a simpler one which I thought as if you can replicate in the exam also. ये याद रखने में सिंपल है और आप एग्जाम में भी इसको लिख सकते हो rather than spending a lot of time in just drawing one particular diagram. I hope you know you don't have more than 7 minutes or 9 minutes. 7 or 9 minutes to write an answer in the exam. So you have to be really very quick and think on your toes. Fine, let's think. क्या था ये? Yes, we are discussing about the vicious cycle of poverty. Vicious cycle of poverty. Let's try to understand this. If there is vicious cycle of poverty, मतलब क्या? There is low incomes. There is low real income. मतलब nominal real nominal no difference. But there is low income. Real छोड़ो, inflation वगैरह बाजू में रखो. But low income. Low income मतलब the person is there in poverty. Now since he has low income, वो क्या करेगा? वो एक malnourished बंदा रहेगा. He'll be a very malnourished guy. And since he's a malnourished guy, he will have a low productivity. He's basically even struggling for his daily food. He may even have a low productivity. Since he has low productivity, okay, he will have low real incomes. Are you getting it? So this is one side of it. The other side of it is, okay, if he has low income, मतलब he is poor, so he will have low savings rate. He will have low savings. Okay, and there be try to understand low saving मतलब क्या? Already मेरे पास 85 रुपए आ रहे हैं दिन के. ठीक है, दिन के 50 रुपए आ रहे हैं और उसमें से भी मेरा खर्चा दिन का is 48 rupees. So 2 रुपए मैं क्या सेव करूंगा? ठीक है, so already he has low savings. Low savings मतलब क्या? Low saving मतलब वो बैंक में भी क्या पैसा रखेगा? अगर सपोज बैंक में भी पैसा नहीं है तो there is no investment. He will not be able to make any investment. He will not be able to make any investment. और investment नहीं है इसका मतलब क्या? उसको investment पे returns नहीं आ रहे. So that is also one of the reasons why there will be vicious cycle of poverty. वो poor है इसके लिए वो poor है. ठीक है, he lacks money. That's the reason why he lacks money. ठीक है, और क्या? If he has low income, he will be able to generate less demand. पैसा ही नहीं उसके पास सरप्लस. 50 में से 48 रुपीस दिन का अगर वो 50 अर्न कर रहा है, 48 रुपीस इज जस्ट he has to spend on just food and everything. ठीक है, तो 2 रुपए में वो क्या डिमांड जनरेट करेगा इकोनॉमी के लिए? इकोनॉमी में डिमांड जनरेट नहीं हो तो दूसरे भी लोग इन्वेस्ट क्यों करेंगे? एंड देन वी सी कि देयर इज मोर कंसंट्रेशन ऑफ वेल्थ हैपनिंग. ठीक है, एंड देन लेटर मतलब जिसके पास पैसा है वो अपना पैसा अपने पास ही रखेगा. ठीक है, एंड वी सी दिस थिंग दैट दिस cycle still remains. Are you getting it? So you can replicate this. Is a fairly simple concept, not that difficult. You can replicate this. There are more complicated ones online. Okay, and there are others like in your books they have not given this, they have given a paragraph format, but if you draw something in the exam, it will break the monotony of the examiner. Okay, as in when you get an opportunity in the examination hall, whenever you're writing any answer for the mains or any other answer, okay, uske liye if you draw anything, it will break the monotony of the examiner. That will be always good. So try to replicate this, try to remember this, and show it in the exams. It's not difficult. Vicious cycle of power. Fine, moving on. The next is about associated terms. Let's try to understand this. Associated terms and concepts. Associated terms and concepts. So there is something called as poverty line and poverty ratio. Now, this is something which you read a lot in your newspapers, in your when you're reading basically government any kind of reports or anything, you tend to read these type terms like poverty line and poverty ratio. अच्छा, by the way, वो पहले की slide सबने copy कर लिया क्या? Slide, I guess all of you guys have copied. You want me to go back to the same slide? Cool, cool, fine. You want me to go back? Like, should I or should I? Nakul has raised hand. Okay, Nakul, I'll give you a chance later to talk in the Q&A wala part. Anyways, I'll assume all of you guys have done it. I'll move ahead with this particular slide. Yes, we were discussing about poverty line and poverty ratio. So poverty line क्या होता है? Poverty line is nothing but try to understand poverty is measured by defining a threshold level of expenditure or income. Okay. And required to for what required to purchase goods and services necessary to satisfy basic needs at the minimal socially acceptable level. At the minimal socially acceptable level. This threshold level एक बेसिकली गवर्नमेंट और जो भी दूसरी अथॉरिटी है वो अथॉरिटी क्या करेगा एक मिनिमम थ्रेशोल्ड लेवल ऑफ इनकम या फिर एक्सपेंडिचर सोच के रखेगा कि ये मिनिमम लेवल ऑफ एक्सपेंडिचर या इनकम लेवल रहना चाहिए. ठीक है, अगर इससे कम कोई भी एक इंडिविजुअल का इनकम इससे भी अगर कम है then we'll call it that particular threshold level is called as poverty line, and that individual will call it as a below poverty line individual. Below poverty line individual. Are you getting it? So ऐसे एक बेसिक मिनिमम इनकम लेवल रहेगा, उसके भी नीचे इफ एन इंडिविजुअल इज अर्निंग देन वी कॉल इट वो पॉवर्टी लाइन के भी नीचे अर्न करने वाला बोला बंदा है, ही इज कॉल्ड एज अ बिलो पॉवर्टी लाइन individual. Now remember the term the BPL term, below poverty line, BPL. Remember this. Fine. And okay, yes, the proportion of population living below it, the proportion of population living below the threshold or living below the poverty line is called as poverty ratio. मतलब total population of the country will be there in the denominator or ऊपर number of people who are living below the poverty line. So that ratio will be called as the poverty ratio. Can anyone give me a rough estimate of poverty ratio in the country today? Just as a CK question. What is the poverty ratio in the country today? क्या लगता है कितने प्रतिशत भारतीय आज पॉवर्टी की रेखा के नीचे, गरीबी की रेखा के नीचे? Just a rough figure. I don't want an exact one. Come on, guys. Let me tell you one thing. Let me tell you all of you guys one thing. See, if you don't know the answer now, try to have a knack of guessing an answer. Okay, Akanksha. Now all of you guys are giving an answer. 30, 50 to 65, 30 to 40. Cool. Aris is saying 50 to 65% of the population is below poverty line. He says 45. Fine. So, all right. See, you may have, Vedangi says 60 to 70% of the poverty people of the country may be below poverty. Durance is 50, Siddhi says 20 to 30. Now, let me tell you, all of you guys, in all the predictions which you are given, Siddhi has come the closest. Siddhi is, Sara, 3 is not the answer. 3 is way too less. 3 to bahut kam. Okay, but then Siddhi has come the closest. Closest matlab kitna? 20. She has come closer to 20. Okay, 20 exactly. If you see in the country right now, official figures are 21.9. Okay, 21.9. As per Tendulkar committee report, उनके हिसाब से कंट्री में पॉवर्टी 21.9 है. मतलब क्या, जितना भी पॉपुलेशन ऑफ द कंट्री है उसका सपोज 100 है, ठीक है, तो 100 में से almost 22 people are there in poverty today. Try to understand. They are below the poverty line. They are poor and they are struggling for the basic needs. Are you getting it? Fine. So And why I'm insisting on you guys guessing any random figure also, because take it from me, हम लोग कितना भी अभी prepare करेंगे, ठीक है, how much ever you prepare, how much ever books you read, how much ever previous year's papers you solve, how much ever mock papers you solve, in the exam UPSC का एक सिर्फ यूनियन पब्लिक सर्विस कमीशन नाम नहीं है, उसका नाम अनएक्सपेक्टेड पब्लिक सर्विस कमीशन भी है, ठीक है. बेसिकली यू विल नॉट expect a question, और वो क्वेश्चन एग्जाम में आएगा, and at that point of time you will have to make a guess, compulsorily you will have to make a guess, ठीक है. there is a strategy with which you have to break the prelims examination, वो तोड़ना होता है, ठीक है. कितना bare minimum attempt होना चाहिए, ये कट ऑफ चाहिए तो कितना अटेम्प्ट चाहिए, कितने रॉन्ग जाएंगे, वो सब कैलकुलेट करना होता है, ठीक है. और उसके हिसाब से यू हैव टू थिंक कि मेरा अटेम्प्ट कितना रहेगा. तो आपको क्वेश्चन के आंसर आए या फिर ना आए, फिर भी ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ योर गट फीलिंग वो आंसर आना चाहिए. आई होप यू रिमेंबर दैट. कौन सा था वो, Slumdog Millionaire. Have you guys seen that movie, Slumdog Millionaire? Dev Patel, I guess. Slumdog Millionaire. All of you guys have seen. Nice, nice. उसमें कैसे वो बचपन का सोच के he is giving the answer कि राम के कौन से हाथ में धनुष था, ठीक है, and what not. He is thinking of everything. ठीक है, यूएस के डॉलर के बिल में कौन है, तो he was thinking of everything. आपको भी ऐसा Slumdog Millionaire टाइप ऐसा एग्जामिनेशन हॉल में होना चाहिए कि बचपन में कुछ सुना था उसके हिसाब से यू विल बी गिविंग एन आंसर. हैव दैट नैक, ठीक है. और मैं ऐसा नहीं बोल रहा हूँ कि इनी मिनी मायने वो ऐसे करके कोई भी आंसर मार्क करो, बट हैव अ हैबिट ऑफ मेकिंग कैलकुलेटेड गेस. मेक अ कैलकुलेटेड गेस मतलब क्या, थोड़ा तुक्का लगाओ, ठीक है, वो चलता है, उसके बगैर एग्जाम क्लियर नहीं होगा, प्रश्न. एनीवेज, गोइंग टू द नेक्स्ट term. The next term is later in one of the, I mean, whenever you will be coming for a general lecture, okay, at that point of time, at the leisure time, at that point of time हम लोग will discuss exactly how to crack through the prelims, how to crack through the mains, वो कैसे करना चाहिए. So हम लोग अलग से will keep a discussion or session or something. At the moment, let's come back to this. Yes, let's try to understand this. What is this? It's nothing but Engel's law. ये क्या बोलता है, ये बोल रहा है that when income level rises, the percentage of overall income spent on food item decreases. So this is very common sense. This is very basic sense. ठीक है. Suppose ये क्या बोल रहा है, अगर income level increase होगा, the percentage of the amount of your income going into the purchasing of food will decrease. Of course, why? Let's try to understand this. एक बंदा था जो हम लोगों ने अभी एग्जाम में किया कि वो 50 रुपीज अर्न कर रहा था और 48 उसका खाने पीने में ही जा रहा था, ठीक है. सो 50 48 बेसिकली वी कैन से 96% of his income used to go in purchasing food items. 96% of his income used to go in purchasing food items. Try to understand this. Suppose वो बहुत skillful बंदा दिख रहा, ठीक है, और rags to riches वाला उसका स्टोरी हो गया और रातों रात वो बहुत अमीर हुआ, ठीक है, बिकॉज ऑफ सम ऑफ द अदर थिंग वो रातों रात बहुत ज्यादा अमीर हुआ, ठीक है. और वो बहुत ज्यादा अमीर हो गया, वो सिचुएशन में पहले उसका इनकम 50 था, वो इनकम लेवल बढ़ गया, अभी 100 हुआ, 100 से 200 हुआ, 200 से 500 हुआ, 500 से 1000 हुआ, 1000 5000 5000 10,000 उसका इनकम लेवल हुआ. तो इनकम लेवल इज इंक्रीजिंग. व्हेन इनकम लेवल इज इंक्रीजिंग ड्रास्टिकली, ये समझो बात कि उसका फूड बढ़ेगा, बट कितना मार्जिनली बढ़ेगा. 48 मतलब एक आदमी खाता तो कितना खाएगा, ठीक है. द फूड इनटेक विल बी रिस्ट्रिक्टेड, राइट, द फूड इनटेक विल बी रिस्ट्रिक्टेड, ठीक है. ट्राई टू 48 वो पहले खाता था, बेयर मिनिमम वड़ा पाव वगैरह खा रहा था, अभी वो थोड़ा अमीर हो गया तो वो सोचेगा चलो आई ईट डोसा और समथिंग, ठीक है, तो 100 रुपीज स्पेंड करेगा, ठीक है. बट देन ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड his income rose from 5000 income rose from 500 to 10,000. उसका खाना rose from 48 to 100. Basically पहले it used to be 96% of his income. The food expenditure used to be 96% of his income. Now the food expense is 100 out of what, 10,000, which comes out to be what, 1%. Are you getting it? 96 से 1% drastically उसका कम हुआ. Have you understood this? The Engel's law. If yes, just type yes in the chat box or clear in the chat box. That's it. So it's like common sense, nothing much to think about. Just I wanted to introduce this term to you. The next, let's go to the next. Yes, there is also something called as World Bank's poverty line estimates. World Bank's poverty line. So India भी अपना एक poverty line लेके आता, इंडिया का भी एक poverty line है, but ऐसा ही World Bank का भी एक poverty line है. There is also World Bank's poverty line estimates. Let's try to understand this. The World Bank estimates of poverty are based on the poverty line of US dollars 1.9 per day per person. इसका मतलब क्या? वर्ल्ड बैंक ने भी पॉवर्टी लाइन डिसाइड किया है. वर्ल्ड बैंक ने कितना पॉवर्टी लाइन डिसाइड किया? उसने बोला 1.9 डॉलर्स पर डे पर पर्सन. मतलब कोई भी एक बंदा 1.9 डॉलर्स पर डे पर पर्सन से कम अर्न कर रहा है, मतलब ही इज द काइंड ऑफ गाय हु इज अंडर poverty. He's the kind of guy who's under poverty. Okay, right now, if we see, it's sort of what 1.9. It's 74, I guess. What is the currency rate right now? 70 US dollar, 74 or something, right? Okay, if you take 1.9 out of it, कितना होगा? 140 के आसपास होगा? 140, 75 it is. Anyways, it will still be what? 76.6. Someone gave very precise. Okay, 140, 150. So if someone is earning in India's rupees, अगर ऐसे ही देखा जाए, crude conversion करे, तो in India's rupees, if someone is earning somewhere near 140 to 150 per day, per person, per day per person, then उससे भी अगर कम earn कर रहा है, then is said to be poor, as per World Bank's definition. As per World Bank's definition. ठीक है, उससे ज्यादा earn कर रहा है, then he is above poverty, he is not poor. और क्या? Recent World Bank estimation shows that countries' poverty rate has been reduced from 21.9% to 12.4% for 2011-12. Try to understand this. ये estimation किसका है? ये estimation World Bank का है. World Bank ऐसा बोल रहा है कि इंडिया ने बहुत poverty कम किया, ठीक है, for 2011, मतलब basically 2001 से 2011-10, 2001 से 2011 का जो decade था, वो decade में इंडिया ने poverty कम किया कितना? 21%, basically 22% से 12%, 22% से 12%, almost 10% कम किया इंडिया ने, ठीक है. Basically it was a time when both BJP, like until 2004 it was BJP, और 2004 के बाद it was Congress. ये लोग दोनों ने साथ में मिलकर they have reduced the poverty rates in India. This is what the World Bank has said. As per this definition of World Bank, as per this definition, mind you, India exactly does not follow this definition. India के पास एक दूसरा उसका खुद का definition भी है, and for that purpose India ने बहुत सारे committees वगैरह set up किया. Okay, there are different committees who time and again suggest India about its poverty line estimates. The current one which we are accepting is called as Suresh Tendulkar Committee. उसके recommendation के हिसाब से we are following the poverty line and poverty estimates in India. And उसके बाद भी एक committee है, उसका नाम था C Rangarajan Committee. वो C Rangarajan Committee we are not following as of now. Okay, क्योंकि political reasons, I'll tell you later. But anyways, I hope you have understood this. Moving on, the World Bank data shows that India is overestimating while counting the number of poor. Of course, क्योंकि इसके हिसाब से हमारे इंडिया में कंट्री में poor कितने? सिर्फ 1. इंडिया में poor कितने? सिर्फ 12% है, पर अपने फिगर्स के हिसाब से कितने? 21% still. Sorry, 22%. अभी भी अपने कंट्री में 22% poor है, ठीक है. So we believe our country is 22% people who are poor, जबकि वर्ल्ड बैंक बोलते हैं नहीं नहीं, तुम्हारे कंट्री में सिर्फ 12% people are poor. So that's the reason why World Bank says that we are overestimating our poverty. Cool. Have you understood this? Should I go to the next slide? If yes, type yes. Siddhi has raised the hand. Siddhi, I'll give you a chance to maybe after 10 minutes we'll switch to Q&A part and we'll discuss about whatever doubt you have. All of you guys are saying yes. Fine. Let me move on to the next slide. Renuka, you wanted to repeat the World Bank wala part, or which part exactly? Which part exactly you want to repeat? World Bank wala part. Fine. See, World Bank is again an international institution. Okay, World Bank has also come out with its poverty estimates. World Bank भी ऐसा बोलता है कि हमारे हिसाब से across the countries of the world, basically across the world, if any individual is earning less than $1.9 per day, if any person is earning less than $1.9 per day, then he will be said to be a poor person. अब उसके हिसाब से इंडिया में अगर so currently, just a second, I'll take it out. But उसके हिसाब से वर्ल्ड बैंक के हिसाब से इंडिया में currently the amount of poor are just 12.4%, 12.4%. और वर्ल्ड बैंक ऐसा बोल रहा है कि हमारे पॉवर्टी, हमारा जितने भी पुअर पीपल थे वो 2001 में 22% थे, वो 22% से 12% we have reached under 12%. So we have drastically reduced the amount of poor in the country. So it is good for the government. Number of poor have decreased. People have come out of poverty. So that is great. ठीक है. And ये तो क्या है? ये तो फिगर्स है वर्ल्ड बैंक के हिसाब से. we are not following this poverty line. We have a different poverty line of our own. We have a different poverty line. और उस poverty line के हिसाब से इंडिया में आज भी the number of poor who are there in India is still 22%. Okay, so World Bank, that's the reason why it says that the poverty in India is not 22%, it's rather 12.4%, and India is overestimating its poverty. This is what World Bank is saying. Fine, we do not agree to that. We have a different point of view. Have you understood this, Renuka? Yes, type yes. Cool. So currently there are 21.9. Harshit, it's 21.9. Certainly. So, yeah. Let's go to the next slide. Yes, there's something called as Global Hunger Index. GHI, Global Hunger Index. ये क्यों? क्योंकि look at the previous year's papers. In fact, last 2-3 साल से I have been, you will find a pattern. Like, see, I told you in the first lecture itself, अगर ये exam crack करना है, there are 3 गीता कुरान बाइबल ऑफ योर्स. 3 चीजें जो आपका गीता कुरान बाइबल है. कौन सा? एक तो प्रीवियस ईयर्स पेपर्स, दूसरा आपका सिलेबस, और तीसरा द थर्ड इज न्यूज़ पेपर्स. सो ये तीनों आपका गीता कुरान बाइबल है, ठीक है, फॉर क्रैकिंग दिस एग्जाम. एंड इसमें से जो आपका गीता है, दैट इज द प्रीवियस ईयर्स पेपर्स. इफ यू रीड दैट particular previous year's papers, look at last 5 years papers, and you'll be able to find that every year they have asked the question on some index or some report. एक ग्लोबल हंगर इंडेक्स के ऊपर क्वेश्चन पूछ लिया, या फिर ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस इंडेक्स के ऊपर क्वेश्चन पूछ लिया, या वर्ल्ड ट्रैवल एंड टूरिज्म इंडेक्स के ऊपर क्वेश्चन पूछा, ठीक है, हु रिलीजेस इट, ठीक है, उसमें क्या क्या इंडिकेटर्स, ऐसे करके क्वेश्चंस दे हैव बीन आस्किंग इन द प्रीलिम्स. सो जस्ट नोटिस दैट पैटर्न, एंड फ्रॉम दिस आई हैड अ हंच कि हाँ ठीक है, ये सब अगर सपोज इंडेक्स वगैरह पूछेंगे और पॉवर्टी में से इंडेक्स पूछेंगे, दिस कैन बी पॉसिबली अ काइंड ऑफ क्वेश्चन, ठीक है, दिस कैन बी पॉसिबली अ काइंड ऑफ क्वेश्चन. क्या है ये? इट टॉक्स अबाउट ग्लोबल हंगर इंडेक्स. It is brought about by whom? ये कौन लेके आता है ग्लोबल हंगर इंडेक्स? Who brings it up? Earlier, it used to be brought about by International Food Policy Research Institute. ठीक है, IFPRI, ये एक body था. This body used to earlier bring about the global hunger index, and it was brought about each year since 2006. But in 2018, IFPRI was refused by was changed, and there was another institute. The other institute was Welt Hunger Hive. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's basically a German name. So it's a private NGO in Germany. Okay. Welt Hunger Hive. I guess that's the pronunciation. If not, at least try and remember this. It's something to do with Welt. Okay, it's something to do with Welt. Either you can say Welt Hunger Hive or what, I don't know. But then remember this. It's not IFPRI. It's Welt Hunger Hive. ये याद रखना, along with Concern Wide. So ये दो NGO है who come up with something called as the Global Hunger Index. अभी Global Hunger Index है, और भी क्या, you look at the previous year's papers, they also tend to ask you about questions about what are the indicators. So इसमें 4 indicators है. It's money, hungry, help. Okay, is it the translation in Germany? Is it the translation in German? Dhanashree? I guess it must be a translation in German. Okay, fine. Oh, that's great. That's great. Thanks for enlightening us. Dhanashree is saying iska matlab in German, it happens to be money, hunger, and help. Okay. Wealth, hunger, hive. I guess iska translation in Germany matlab money, hunger, help. Very true. Very related to the issue. Okay. So ये याद रखना, ये एक NGO है, and साथ में साथ the other NGO is Concern Wide. Remember these 2 names. They will try to trick you. They will try to put the IFPRI, International Food Policy Research Institute, ये डालेंगे ऑप्शन में, बट आपको याद रखना है कि ये ऑप्शन नहीं है. Rather it's Welt Hunger Hive and Concern Wide. ये याद रखना, ठीक है. 4 पैरामीटर्स है. कौन से 4 पैरामीटर्स? There's child wasting, there's child stunting, then there's child mortality, and there's child undernourishment. ये 4 पैरामीटर्स है जिसके बेसिस के ऊपर दे कैलकुलेट ग्लोबल फूड हंगर इंडेक्स. अभी चाइल्ड वेस्टिंग मतलब क्या होता है? चाइल्ड वेस्टिंग मतलब अ सिचुएशन विच आपने कोई ना कोई ने ऐसा एक बंदा देखा रहेगा जिसका वेट हार्डली कुछ है, बट उसका हाइट बहुत ज्यादा है, ठीक है, बहुत लंबा बंदा बट हार्डली कोई वेट, ठीक है. सो ऐसा सिचुएशन यू टेंड टू फाइंड इन योर फ्रेंड सर्कल. यू आल्सो टेंड टू फाइंड इन लाइक एनी पर्सन यू मस्ट हैव सीन जिसका हाइट अच्छा खासा है बट उसका वेट बड़ा नहीं, ठीक है. सच काइंड ऑफ पर्सन are said to be child wasting. It is called as child wasting. ठीक है. ऐसे ही child stunting भी होता है. Stunting मतलब क्या कि जिसका एज बढ़ रहा है बट हाइट नहीं बढ़ रहा. सो ऐसे बहुत सारे लोग होते हैं जिसका हाइट नहीं बढ़ता, हाइट एडिक्वेटली बढ़ता नहीं है. उसके एज के हिसाब से उसका हाइट बढ़ना चाहिए बट नहीं बढ़ रहा है. ठीक है. सो वो भी क्यों हो सकते हैं, वो भी दैट कैन आल्सो बी अ रीजन बिकॉज ऑफ हंगर, दैट कैन बिकॉज ऑफ malnourishment, दैट कैन बिकॉज ऑफ हंगर. ठीक है. ऐसे ही वेस्टिंग कैन आल्सो बी बिकॉज ऑफ हंगर एंड malnourishment. ऐसे ही इट कैन मॉर्टेलिटी मतलब क्या, डेथ. एंड अंडर नरिशमेंट मतलब ही इज नॉट प्रॉपर्ली नरिश्ड. सॉरी, अंडर नरिशमेंट मतलब ही इज नॉट प्रॉपर्ली नरिश्ड. मतलब क्या, बेसिकली इज नॉट गेटिंग, he is eating enough food but is not getting enough vitamins, is not getting enough proteins, he is not getting enough fats. That is undernourishment. So ये चार पैरामीटर्स है. एक तो चाइल्ड वेस्टिंग मतलब वेट टू हाइट, वेट कम है हाइट के हिसाब से, हाइट बहुत ज्यादा है, वेट उतना है ही नहीं. सेकेंड इज स्टंटिंग. स्टंटिंग मतलब क्या, हाइट बढ़ा ही नहीं, एज के हिसाब से हाइट बढ़ा ही नहीं, एज ज्यादा है हाइट नहीं बढ़ रहा है. ठीक है. थर्ड इज mortality and the fourth is undernourishment. I've in fact given the weightage also. 1/6 weightage is given to child wasting, was one 1/6 weightage is given to stunting, 1/3 is given to mortality, and 1/3 is given to undernourishment. Okay, the next is there are 10 points. What is okay? Fine, forgive me. It's not morality. It's mortality. Actually, I messed up. I even take ethics, so I think वो ethics के flow में मैंने morality लिख लिया. It's actually mortality. mortality. Fine, just change the spelling here. I'll change after the lecture is over. Anyways, so याद रखो ये 100-point scale है. 0 is the best score which is considered to no hunger, and 100 is the worst which is said to be everyone is under hunger. Okay, no one is well fed. Fine, so it can be, these are extremes. No country is at that extreme. Every country lies in the band of 0 to hunger. So a country comes closer to 0. Some other countries, basically developed countries, are closer to 0. The underdeveloped countries are closer to 100. So ये भी एक टर्म याद रखना. कौन सा टर्म है? ग्लोबल हंगर इंडेक्स. Remember this, a likely question, a possible question. If at all they tend to ask you question from poverty, तो ये एक possible question पूछ सकते हो. Okay. Okay, let's do yes Gini coefficient. ये भी एक डिस्कस कर लेते हैं. गिनी कोएफिशिएंट मतलब क्या? गिनी कोएफिशिएंट ये हम लोगों ने पहले देखा था. कभी देखा था? कैन यू टेल मी एग्जैक्टली हम लोगों ने गिनी कोएफिशिएंट कभी डिस्कस किया था? जस्ट अभी कपल ऑफ स्लाइड्स बैक वी हैड डिस्कस गिनी कोएफिशिएंट. The role of IFPRI. IFPRI does nothing else but brings this report. ये इंडेक्स वो हर कंट्री का देखेगा, पैरामीटर्स वगैरह, तो उसमें स्टंटिंग कितना है, उसमें चाइल्ड नरिशमेंट वगैरह कितना है, और उसके हिसाब से ये इंडेक्स लेके आएगा. दैट्स व्हाट दिस IFPRI does. Sanvi says relative poverty. Yes. Ishwari also says relative poverty. Atharva, Ashit, all of you guys are saying relative poverty. Yes, हम लोगों ने उसके टाइम पे देखा था गिनी कोएफिशिएंट. Relative poverty basically measures inequality. Relative poverty मतलब वही है ना कि the person feels poor as compared to everyone else, in relation to everyone else in the society. So standard of living is not as at par with the standard of living of everyone else in the society. Okay, so that's basically inequality. And how is it measured? It's measured by something called as Gini coefficient. Or Gini coefficient matlab it measures inequality. और ये भी याद रखना that it ranges between what? It ranges between 0 to 1. क्योंकि उसका range क्या है? 0 to 1. ये याद रखना है. Why I'm saying this 0 to 1? Because exactly यही एक statement पहले एक बार आ चुका है. ठीक है, पहले एक बार statement कि 0 is perfect equality and 1 is perfect inequality. ये statement exactly पहले एक बार आ चुका है Gini coefficient वाला. ठीक है, सो ये याद रखना. 0 मतलब क्या? परफेक्ट इक्वालिटी. अगर कोई भी कंट्री का गिनी कोएफिशिएंट का वैल्यू 0 आया मतलब दैट कंट्री इज परफेक्ट इक्वालिटी. मतलब सबके पास 5 रुपए सबके पास है तो सबके पास 5 ही रुपए. ठीक है, उससे 1 रुपया ना ज्यादा 1 रुपया ना कम. ठीक है. ऑन द अदर हैंड 1 मतलब परफेक्ट इनइक्वालिटी, मतलब किसी के पास कुछ नहीं, सिर्फ एक ही बंदे के पास सब कुछ है. ठीक है, सॉर्ट ऑफ एवरीवन, देयर इज ओनली वन अंबानी, एवरीवन इज लाइक फकीर आदमी, वो तो झोला लेके, एवरीवन इज लाइक फकीर आदमी झोला लेके निकल जाते हैं. बट देन देयर इज ओनली वन हु इज अमीर, व्हिच इज अंबानी. कूल. आई होप यू अंडरस्टैंड दिस. गिनी कोएफिशिएंट समझा आपको? ये यू हैव टू रिमेंबर द टर्म गिनी कोएफिशिएंट एंड द सेकंड लाइन, क्योंकि वो पहले पूछ चुके हैं. 0 परफेक्ट इक्वालिटी एंड 1 परफेक्ट इनइक्वालिटी. Fine, have you written the slide? Like, have you made the notes of the slide? Okay, I should quickly do it. Okay, anyways, we'll do one thing. We'll switch to the Q&A wala part. Let me open the participant screen also. Okay. So any of you guys have any doubt pertaining to today's lecture? If no, then we can. Shripad says Aruna Sharma case. Yes, we'll discuss that. Will anyone like to air their thoughts for Aruna Sharma case? Will anyone like to speak up for Aruna Sharma case? If anyone knows about it, you guys can raise your hand. Yes, sure, you can, sure. Renuka, you can. Yes, you can. Feel free to do that. Okay, so let me tell you what exactly she was a nurse, Sunny Singh, who was sexually assaulted. Do that. She was a nurse, sexually assaulted. Okay, now let me tell you this. I guess it will be better if I tell you. It will be more. And let me switch to the Q&A on the slide also. बहुत पीछे आएगा वो. I was too ambitious, I guess, today. Yes. So, very true. Sunny, as you say, she was a nurse and she was basically KEM का nurse. KEM, you know, na? KEM, I guess everyone knows these days. कोई ऐसा नहीं रहेगा जिसको KEM नहीं मालूम रहेगा. Everyone knows it's basically the place where you usually go to if you are infected by COVID-19. And she was in vegetative state for 37 years. Vedangi says, yes. क्या था? Scene ऐसा था that she was a nurse and basically when she was a nurse, one of the ward boys, I guess it was a medical professional था, and one of the ward boys had sexually assaulted her. Okay, and that too in a very unnatural way. You can read the details if you want, if you are inclined to read online. But then that too in a very unnatural way, she was sexually assaulted. And in that particular accident, she was so traumatized that she went into a paralytic state and she went into paralysis. She was in a state of coma since last 37 years. Okay, 37 years. I don't remember the exact figure. Vedangi says 37 years, but yes, some odd 30 years, she was in a state of coma. And when she was in a state of coma, time and again, there have been demands. There have been demands time and again कि ऐसे सिचुएशन में जो इतने साल से जो बंदा कोमा में है वो सिचुएशन में क्या करना चाहिए should there be should he be allowed to depart from this to depart from this earth or should she जो भी है ठीक है कोई तो मेरे ख्याल से एक मुन्ना भाई में कैरेक्टर भी था मुन्ना भाई एमबीबीएस में एक कैरेक्टर था ठीक है जो मोहन भाई या कुछ ऐसा कुछ नाम था मुन्ना भाई में याद था मुन्ना भाई एमबीबीएस में एक कैरेक्टर है जो हमेशा कोमा में ही है और बोल रहे कोमा से कभी बाहर नहीं निकला एक बेड ऑफ आनंद भाई इज वेरी टू हरी मोहन भाई नहीं था मानस इट्स आनंद भाई yes exactly आनंद भाई and even Vedant says euthanasia true that so when she was in the state of vegetative state she was not doing anything so there were few demands raised okay, why not to allow her to die why not to allow her to die but if you see in India because suicide is a criminal offense suicide is considered I guess it was amended very recently but until now suicide was considered to be a criminal offense मतलब कोई सुसाइड करे तो उसको पहले पकड़ के जेल में डालते ठीक है सुसाइड करने का अटेम्प्ट करे बेसिकली नॉट सुसाइड कर लिया बट सुसाइड करने का अटेम्प्ट तो उसको पकड़ के पहले जेल में डालते ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड बिकॉज इन इंडिया वी डू नॉट अलाउ राइट टू डाई वी अलाउ व्हाट राइट टू लिव आर्टिकल 21 में ये लिखा है ठीक है बट जब भी व्हेन आई वाज डिस्कसिंग दिस आई मीन व्हेन वी वर डिस्कसिंग दिस ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड उसमें क्या है राइट टू लिव ठीक है देयर इज आर्टिकल 21 सेज राइट टू लिव विद डिग्निटी says right to live with dignity. So that's what the lawyer discussed about, and that's what lawyer was pitching. That I mean, the one who was in favor of mercy killing, the one who was in favor of allowing her to die. इसको क्या बोलते हैं? इसको technical terms में it's called euthanasia. Okay, the person who were in favor of allowing her to die, ठीक है, वो euthanasia के state में. He said, sorry, he was a he. So he said that if there is life has to be with dignity. If there is life without dignity, then in that situation, it is not said to be a life. Because in that situation, a person should be allowed to die. So if there is right to life, then there should be a right to death also. Okay, right to live है, right to death भी होना चाहिए. Okay, so this was basically the argument. Euthanasia, even till date, remains to be a very debatable topic. होना चाहिए या नहीं होना चाहिए. There are few arguments in favor of euthanasia. There are few arguments against euthanasia. अच्छा किसको लगता है कि ऐसा मर्सी किलिंग अलाउ करना चाहिए मतलब यूथेनेशिया किसी को अगर मरना होगा तो राइट टू डाई अलाउ करना चाहिए कौन किसको ऐसा लग रहा है हाउ मेनी ऑफ यू गाइस आर सेइंग कि हाँ यूथेनेशिया अलाउ करना चाहिए Arshad, I'll do that. Few are saying no, few are saying yes. Will anyone like to say in favor of euthanasia? Will anyone like to say in favor of euthanasia? I want a discussion. Come on. Any of you guys will, you are saying no, you are saying no. Okay, Harshit is saying no, I guess I shall be allowed after a certain age. It shall be allowed, it should be allowed after a certain age. Okay. For those who are saying कि euthanasia मतलब mercy killing allow करना चाहिए, or for those who are saying no, I want one of you guys to take a stand and give an argument. Like you can raise your hand, you can unmute yourself, and you can give an argument. Go on. Vedani says it's better to end the life rather than to suffer in such a situation. Okay, Harshit has something to say. Let me, Harshit, you have a chance to unmute yourself.
Sir, I guess there must be some parameters set on which the government or the committee can judge that whether this person is allowed to die or not. Means maybe the mental checkup it shall not be like that कि वो किसी के pressure में या because of some family reason वो die नहीं कर रहा. Naturally he wants to die or she wants to die. So there can
you're
be a
saying
parameter set.
it should be allowed, but it should be qualified. This is what you're saying.
Yes,
Conditional,
yes,
I think.
yes.
Cool, fine. And there are other opinions also. I guess. Will anyone like to counter this? Will anyone like to counter this? Harshit's opinion. Harshit saying कि हाँ होना चाहिए. This was Harshit opines. What do you guys say? None are willing to unmute themselves. Okay, anyways. But yes, there are a few there in the chat box who are giving their opinions. Ravi says, Harish says that should not be an option. Harish says that should not be right to. Okay, let me tell you. In my opinion, I think it's a decision made with an irrational mind. Kevin says कि एक irrational mind will ask for a right to die. Okay, put down old animals, life. Person may be suffering. Fine, I get it. Few of you guys are saying yes, few of you guys are saying no. Let me just primarily bring you to a main line of arguments for those who are in favor of euthanasia, I mean mercy killing, who are against the idea of euthanasia. For those who are in favor of euthanasia, they say this thing, okay, first of all, let me tell you for those who are against euthanasia. Against euthanasia वाला मतलब basically वो कहते हैं कि नहीं मरने नहीं देना चाहिए. ठीक है, वो कौन लोग उन्होंने क्या आर्गुमेंट दिया? उन्होंने आर्गुमेंट ये दिया that humans naturally do not have any rights, not naturally have any right to take anyone else's right. ठीक है, आपके पास कोई right नहीं है, आप किसी और का right. And when a person is in a vegetative state, that person is anyways not able to tell his opinion. अगर वो अपना opinion नहीं बोल सकता है, in that situation, how can you judge on someone else's behalf कि हाँ उसको मार दो? Fine, if Aruna Shanbag wasn't able to speak for herself, okay, but then Aruna Shanbag, how can you say that now this is time, let Aruna Shanbag die? Okay, she must also be feeling the pain. How can you say this? You cannot say this. Okay, and since we are talking about the policy issue, it changes from person to person. So in the case of Aruna Shanbag case, हम लोग तो ये समझ रहे कि हाँ she may be suffering, but in someone else's case it is quite possible कि वो तो जिंदा रहना चाहता है. Maybe वो आनंद भाई, ठीक है, उसको जिंदा रहने की कोशिश, जिंदा रहना चाहता होगा. ठीक है, तो हम लोग क्यों उसके हिसाब से डिसीजन लेंगे? So we cannot decide for sure on someone else's behalf कि हाँ इसको मरने देना चाहिए या नहीं मरने देना चाहिए. तो first of all we cannot law बनाना इसके ऊपर थोड़ा difficult हो जाए. दूसरी बात ये कि looking at the way in which Indian families are divided and Indian hereditary and जो भी hereditary से पैसा वगैरह आता है, ठीक है, will वगैरह जो भी होता है, उस केस में we do not know कि अगर suppose एक old age parent है, it's quite possible because of the family feud or family dispute or something, the kids may want the parents to die. At that point, there may be some vested interest also. In that case also, there may be some vested interest involved. Okay, so we do not know about this. Okay, Vedangi is saying, but to be in a vegetative state for such a long period, when you can't even take a stand for yourself. Yes, very true, Vedangi, very true. It may be a very traumatic experience, but then it's quite possible Aruna Shanbag herself may have been feeling कि नहीं मुझे जिंदा रहना है. You cannot say for sure कि नहीं उसको मरना ही है. Although I actually, in my opinion, I am also in favor of mercy killing. Even I am in favor of mercy killing. But then you cannot say for sure. अच्छा, इसका, so I hope you understood the arguments in favor, arguments in favor, I guess बहुत लोगों को मालूम भी है कि अच्छा, Meg is really so very good. From a religious concept, it is usually said that birth and death is not in your hands. So have so how can one decide to end anyone's life? Okay, Meg gives a real like very new angle, very proper angle. But Meg, let me also counter by saying this thing. Do that. Okay, but Meg, let me also counter by saying this thing that in many religions they also allow you to go for extreme levels of austerity. Austerity मतलब क्या? Austerity मतलब creating so much pain on your body to get the मोक्ष. ठीक है, वो बहुत सारे रिलीजन प्रपोज भी करते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल आई गेस इट वाज साराखना इन जैनिज्म. साराखना इन जैनिज्म, हर्ष से समाधि इन हिंदुइज्म. ठीक है, वेरी ट्रू. एंड जैनिज्म में है, बुद्धिज्म में भी है, हिंदुइज्म में भी है. बहुत सारे रिलीजन में ऐसा अलाउ करते हैं दैट यू कैन गो फॉर दैट लेवल ऑफ ऑस्टेरिटी, that level of samadhi, that you can end your life. Okay, that is also possible. So few religions propose, few religions do not propose. ऐसा भी हो सकता है. Okay, Harshit has one thing to suggest also. Just a second, let me just. Okay, Harshit has said that legal authority shall be asked to donate some assets which can be donated to NGO or some non-corrupt institution in order to reduce the crime. Which, okay, Harshit has given an opinion, very true. Harshit, that can be very well included. Okay, now let me tell you this. This kind of dividing the society, this kind of two different point of views about one particular thing in a society was there earlier, is right now also. And let me tell you what India's stand is right now. Right now, in that Aruna Sharma case, Supreme Court took the call that yes, euthanasia will be allowed in India. Euthanasia will be allowed in India. And euthanasia allowed kiya, but kaisa? They allowed euthanasia, only passive euthanasia. There is something called as passive euthanasia. Passive euthanasia matlab kya? Passive euthanasia matlab ye. Passive euthanasia का मतलब ये that आप कोई भी patient को, there are two ways in which you can give death to a person. Either you inject some or the other poison in his body, or you give, मतलब कुछ भी करके, you maybe give him some medicines with which he'll die. Okay, maybe give him some poison or something. Because that way, that is called as active euthanasia. मतलब allowing someone to die, and for that you actively supporting it. Passive euthanasia मतलब क्या? Just removing the life support system and allowing him to demise. ठीक है, तो removing the life support मतलब वेंटिलेटर पे है तो वो वेंटिलेटर निकाल दे, ऑक्सीजन है तो वो ऑक्सीजन निकाल देगा. ठीक है, जो भी है. ठीक है, सपोज उसका किडनी फेलियर वगैरह भी हुआ था तो उसमें भी उसका जो बाहर मशीन रहता है वो क्या बोलता है, फॉरगॉट द नेम, मतलब वो ब्लड प्यूरिफाई करता है. ठीक है, आर्टिफिशियल किडनी, वो भी वो सारी चीजें निकाल देना, एंड देन अलाउिंग हिम टू डाई gradually. So that is something which has been allowed. ठीक है, so passive euthanasia in which you remove the life support system of an individual, वो अलाउ किया गया. ठीक है, एक्टिव यूथनेशिया जिसमें आप जानबूझ के डेलिबरेटली पॉइजन दे रहे हो, वो अलाउ नहीं किया गया इंडिया में. ऐसा वैसे बहुत सारे कंट्रीज है, ठीक है, जिसमें अलाउ किया गया, बट इंडिया में वो अलाउड नहीं है. इंडिया में पैसिव यूथनेशिया अलाउड है, एक्टिव यूथनेशिया अलाउड नहीं है. और दूसरा क्या कंसेप्ट है, दूसरा सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये भी बोला कि बहुत सारे चेक्स एंड बैलेंसेस हो गए. इनफैक्ट ऑल द आर्गुमेंट्स व्हिच यू हैव गिवन टुडे, वो सारे आर्गुमेंट्स तभी भी थे, और सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये भी बोला कि बहुत सारे चेक्स एंड बैलेंसेस होने चाहिए, कि इसका बहुत ज्यादा मिसयूज भी हुआ जा सकता है. Yes, very true, Vedang. It's difficult to say whether the patient will get back to normal life or not. Okay. Fine. Somebody is saying that Harshit is saying that it should not be allowed just because the family cannot afford. Even since no person thinks of committing suicide for any obstacle that occurs in their lives, it is when a person loses hope. I think lose hope for the criticism of the society. Okay, Kevin, you are too critical about the society, but also try to understand. At times, it may not be the society; it may be the mental state of the guy. Okay, it cannot, like, there may be many factors who may depend. Yes, Kevin, but I agree to this that person commits suicide not just because of himself. That's because he's under the society and is there under social pressure. I think one should have spiritual box. But for Samadhi, Maya is saying for Samadhi, not even Samadhi, but in general also I'm saying that there are many, or you consider Upvas, right? You consider Upvas. There are many religions which allow Upvas, okay, which allow you to go for fast. Okay, and that situation of fast, that situation of Upvas or something, what ultimately happens? You are causing some kind of pain in your body, right? Okay, उस केस में अगर suppose किसी का death हो गया तो क्या? Will it be considered as euthanasia or not? Right? That's basically the answer to your question. yes, samadhi spiritual powers के लिए भी होता है, मोक्ष वगैरह के लिए भी होता है, but ultimately what is happening, you are killing someone, right? You have 5 6 years, they got a good number of money. Arshad is basically trying to lay down a mechanism कि 5 6 साल के बाद उसको कैसे दिया जाए, या फिर कोई एनजीओ वगैरह जो नॉन करप्ट हो उसको कैसे दिया जाए. Let me tell you what Supreme Court said. Supreme Court ने वैसा बोला that basically उसके family members को पूछा जाएगा, और family members को पूछने के बाद भी there will be 2 doctors who will vet and say this thing कि 2 independent doctors completely unconnected with the family who will say this thing कि ये बंदा is in a confirmed vegetative state and is less likely that he may come out of it. Less likely. Basically, we are running on probability. So both the doctors should be convinced कि हाँ इसके बाहर निकलने के चांसेस बहुत कम है. ठीक है, इससे बाहर अगर रिकवर भी हो गया तो शायद से रिकवर फुल्ली नहीं होगा. सो ऐसा 2 अलग अलग डॉक्टर्स भी बोलते हैं. सो वी हैव बोथ द we take the support of, we take the opinion of the family as well as we take the opinion of the doctors also. Okay, now let me tell you this. इसको क्योर करने के लिए एक और वेरी प्रोग्रेसिव थॉट ये भी है that there is a concept of something called as living will. Living will क्या कहते हैं उसको? It is called as living will. Living will मतलब क्या? Living will is a situation in which when you are alive and when you are healthy, at that point of time itself, you write in a will that if at all I end up in a situation because of some accident or because of some disease or something, if I end up into a situation wherein I am in a vegetative state and there are less chances of my recovery, तो वो situation में मुझे कैसे treat किया जाए, ठीक है, वो मैं मेरे living will में बोलूँगा, ठीक है, मैं खुद मेरे बारे में decide कर रहा हूँ. So that is a concept which has been too much talked about कि हाँ ऐसा किया जा सकता है. Suppose someone wants to give any kind of, मतलब वो सिचुएशन में कोई बंदा एंड अप करेगा तो उसके टाइम पे वो उसका लिविंग विल का ओपिनियन भी लिया जाएगा कि वो जब भी जिंदा था तो उसका कहने का क्या मतलब, जिंदा मतलब वो जब भी खुद हेल्दी था और वो जब भी अपना ओपिनियन वगैरह बोल सकता था तो उसका खुद का ओपिनियन क्या था. So that is a concept of living will which has been proposed not as something which will give a more, I don't know how to spell this. I think maybe I don't know. But then anyways, living will मतलब ये है, living will मतलब when the person is active and is healthy, at that point of time he will give his opinion. Fine. Have you understood about euthanasia? Have you understood both the sides of euthanasia? क्या होना चाहिए नहीं होना चाहिए? Basically, Aruna Sharma was the first case in which right to die was also recognized. Aruna Sharma case में euthanasia India में पहली बार allow भी किया गया. KEM hospital था. I guess it was not way back. And you guys will learn about this in your polity. आपका polity कितना हो? शायद से polity में you will learn about this. Fundamental rights वगैरह आपका चालू रहेगा. At that point of time, you will learn about this. Article 21 we will discuss. Okay. Anyways. Yes, and there was one more thing about Nordic and Scandinavian countries. I guess that was the second thing which was yet to be discussed. So let me tell you what Nordic and Scandinavian countries are. There is someone still in the waiting room. Hold on. Yes, let me tell you what Nordic countries are. Abhi, Nordic countries basically वहाँ पे एक peninsula है. In fact, I don't have a map right here. Okay, now what I can do is just hold on. I'll just open some map online. Just hold on. Okay, let me share a screen here. Just one second. I hope you guys can see this. ये this is the map of Northern Europe and try to understand this is the Scandinavian peninsula. ये जो पूरा है ना ये वाला part जो नॉर्वे स्वीडन डेनमार्क वाला था वो स्कैंडिनेवियन पेनिनसुला है. ठीक है, इट इज बेसिकली अ पेनिनसुला. पेनिनसुला मतलब सराउंडेड बाय 3 साइड्स बाय वाटर. उसमें डेनमार्क भी आ गया. ठीक है, तो व्हेन आई से स्कैंडिनेवियन कंट्रीज बेसिकली आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट 3 कंट्रीज. कौन से 3? आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट नॉर्वे, आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट स्वीडन एंड आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट डेनमार्क. ठीक है, बट व्हेन आई से नॉर्डिक कंट्रीज, स्कैंडिनेवियन मतलब ये 3, खाली ये 3. व्हेन आई से नॉर्डिक कंट्रीज, नॉर्डिक मतलब ये सारे कंट्रीज जिसमें आइसलैंड भी आएगा, उसमें नॉर्वे भी आएगा, स्वीडन भी आएगा, उसमें फिनलैंड भी आएगा. all these countries will come under Nordic countries. So Nordic में बहुत सारे countries आते हैं, Scandinavian में सिर्फ 3 ही countries आते हैं. But in general, these terms not hard and fast. These terms are used interchangeably. Fine. This was about Nordic and Scandinavian countries. This is available online. I don't know which site. Other site है ये. TripSavvy करके एक site है, उसमें भी available है. Just have a look. Nothing much to worry about. 3 countries in case of Scandinavian countries. Geographical identity हो. Nordic countries मतलब और भी ज़्यादा countries उसमें आएंगे. And Baltic countries मतलब this is basically the Baltic Sea. ठीक है, ये वाले countries है वो Baltic Sea है. Baltic Sea में क्या क्या आएगा, जो भी countries उसके आजू बाजू में, for example Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, ये सब countries ये Baltic Sea के आजू बाजू में आएंगे. So they are the one who come under Baltic. Fine. So this is about Nordic, and this is about it's a very complicated question you are asking, Ashik. It is quite possible. He may have expressed his opinion that 50 years से भी ज़्यादा. See, we are running on probability here. We are running on chances here. It is possible he may live. It is possible he may die. We don't know. We don't exactly know. So that's the reason why I'm saying it's not 100% sure. We are walking in gray area. The world entire is not white and black. Okay, the world is somewhere in between, and we will have to draw a fine line. Okay, maintaining and walking on that fine line is not that easy. Yes, Dhruv also true that. So there are both the sides. We are working on a fine line. In fact, what I suggest is here the judiciary should also be involved and should be taken on a case-to-case basis. You can't have possibly a generic rule about this as a law. You cannot have a generic rule. It should be dealt with a case-to-case basis. Fine. So we'll stop the lecture here. We'll stop the session here. We'll meet again next time. We'll continue with the topic of poverty and